Hello, Sean. How are you tonight?
I'm excellent, Guano Maestro. It is night 2 of week 2 of the Modern Streamers League. Whether it's morning, afternoon, night, or late at night, the time is right for great modern tech, great modern performances, and of course, another night spent raising opportunities for our two teams' charities as we play out the evening. Team Ice and Team Fire. Guano, after watching on Monday night, there was one thing I was surprised by. A dominating night by Team Fire as they went 4-1 on the night. They now lead in the overall match standings 8-7 because of that powerhouse performance. And they also now have the only 3 players who are undefeated after a week and a half in the Modern Streamers League. We saw Cat White, Dido, and Robcaster Mage all go 2-0, all members of Team Fire. Do you think Team Ice can kind of pull a reverse tonight?
Yeah, I mean, these teams are so evenly matched up. I wouldn't be surprised. I mean, they've got great players on both sides, and the matchups tonight look really good. It looks like a lot of really fun, interesting, different type of decks that are being played. I mean, it's with Sodek and Yama with the Graveyard against Hardened Scales. A lot of these are just like, we had maybe one match last time where it was just throw everything as fast as you can, get there as quick. There's no, real like, okay, look at this. They're just doing what they have to do, and they're not interacting at all. And I like that stuff.
It'll be interesting tonight. We had Francisco on as our guest from Team Ice on Monday night. His specialty, Amulet decks. We're going to see 2 Amulet decks from Team Ice tonight. League founder, TheSaintDoom, is going to lead us off on one. And then we'll see Francisco himself play later this evening. It is the second night of week 2 in the Modern Streamers League, our competition between Team Ice and Team Fire. Team Fire up 8-7 so far through 3 nights. These two teams have not only donated their time and tech to help further Modern as their beloved format in Magic the Gathering, but they're also playing for charities throughout Season 1 of the Modern Streamers League. Team Fire is playing for A21. A21 seeks to end human trafficking around the world. And Team Ice playing for the Cancer Research Institute. They're trying to end all forms of cancer and make those cures available to everyone, no matter where you are in the world, your socioeconomic status, or anything else that might inhibit you from getting the great medical care that you and your loved ones deserve. If you have a favorite team or a favorite charity, you can support both with the button right underneath us here on the Modern Streamers League. All right, before we get to match 1 and bring on our special guest, who I am so excited to have with us this evening. He is one of the defining voices that's up and coming in the modern podcast community. We'll get to Shane from the Dive Down in just a bit. Before we do that, though, Guano, what match are you most looking forward to tonight here on night 2 of week 2 in the Modern Streamers League?
Well, we got a lot of good stuff here. I mean, you got 2 Karn decks going, right? We got Doom and Francisco. The Karn against Fpawlusz Jeskai, there's a lot of control going on there. So I'm not really sure exactly. Oh no, it's the Druid, right? Druid Karn. That's right. And yeah, that's right. That's what Doom's playing, the Druid Karn. That's with the Jeskai. It seems like there's a lot of control there, so that's going to be interesting. Sspiderspace plays my favorite deck, the Thalia Stompy. Anything Doom and taxes. I've said it many times. That's a tough matchup with Jun, though. I always have a hard time with them. Francisco, obviously, the master of the Amulet Titan deck. That was what our last show was all about when he was on. Taught us a lot against the prison. So we got basically double Karns, dueling Karns. That's going to be really interesting. I mean, I'm not really sure how that one's going to go, but probably my favorite, I was talking about it earlier, is the Sodek Yamakiller. I love Graveyard against Hardened Scales, Dredge. It's just going to be a quick one. Each match is as fast as they can, getting everything they can, as much damage as quickly as possible.
Yeah, that's going to be a fun one to look forward to. For me, Noblemurloc on Zoo Burn. He just wasn't fast enough last week against Hardened Scales. Can Zoo Burn be fast enough against Eldrazi Tron tonight? Once that game gets to turn 4 or turn 5, if Murloc doesn't have the reach to finish it off, his creatures are going to be no match for Eldrazi Tron on the ground. Can Zoo Burn get there fast enough against kind of a mid-range creature deck in Eldrazi Tron? I think that's going to be really interesting tonight. 5 great matches. The entire league so far decided by just one match, with Team Fire up 8-7 over Team Ice. Coming up, we meet tonight's special guest. It's Shane from the Dive Down podcast. But first, we have to thank our sponsors. We couldn't do this without both Card Hoarder and Card Kingdom. Card Hoarder, they have everything you need to play any deck you want when you're ready to play Magic online. You need new tech? Well, they've got it for you. Their bots are quick, they're always efficient and always competitive. And if you need cardboard, well, Card Kingdom's got you hooked up there. Whether it's something esoteric, like, say, a Judge Foil Elishnorn. Yeah, you remember they issued those. They're very, very cool. The Phyrexian language Elishnorns. They've got them. They've got them at a competitive price, and they've got your standard, modern, staples, everything you need, even packs for drafting at a great price as well. Check them out, Card Kingdom and Card Hoarder, making sure that we can bring you the Modern Streamers League here on Twitch. With that, Guano, let's get tonight's forecast of doom and get into round one. Capolo 42 on Jeskai Saheeli combo against TheSaintDoom himself on Druid Karn. That comes up as we kick off night 2 of week 2 of the Modern Streamers League.
Welcome to the Forecast of Doom. This is a very special forecast because, well, I'm playing. So I have Druid Karn, and that is a devoted Druid deck which is trying to win with Karn the Great Creator against Jeskai Saheeli, which is a control combo deck. I'm not sure how I'm going to win with a devoted Druid combo because devoted Druid's really weak in the face of all of those spot removal spells. If we're going to count them out, there's probably too many, but let's go real quick. 2 Force of Negations effectively counterspell here, 4 Lightning Bolt, 2 Lightning Helix, 4 Path Exile, 4 Remand, 1 Spell Pierce in the main, and then a lot more in the sideboard, including Engineered Explosives, Supreme Verdict, and Anger of the Gods. all of those spells hit all of my creatures. So the main key cards from the Karn deck game 1 is going to be landing Karn, grabbing a Pithing Needle on Saheeli to keep Capolo from comboing off, and landing it to Fairy to protect my own threats. From Capolo's side, his key cards I've already noted is those burn spells, those removal spells, and that disruption. That paired with a Snapcaster Mage and Snapcaster Beats should be enough to get there. Sideboard, I have Scavenging Ooze and perhaps some Path to Exiles, which I could bring in to further disrupt that Felidar combo. Capolo, I already mentioned what he has sideboard. He has more removal spells. So really the key to this game is whether or not I can protect Karn, the Great Creator, because that is the key card in this match from my side, and whether or not Capolo can keep the board clear on my end. Well, that's what it is. Let's see how this all plays out.
Sean Seacrease, along with our special guest for this evening, he combines with the 3 other, well, not quite Lions, but key broadcasters to form the Dive Down. It's Shane from the Dive Down, all the way from Denver, Colorado. Shane, thanks for joining us this evening on the Modern Streamers League.
Oh, man, it's my pleasure to be here. I'm super hyped to have a chance to interact with the community, try my hand at some commentating. I'm super hyped to see these players tonight.
So Capolo 42 rolling out on the Jeskai Saheeli combo deck. This is a control combo deck, and TheSaintDoom, he's going to be on his Druid Karn list. We heard his apprehension going into this game, and we are watching all of the matches this week from the perspective of Team Ice. So we're going to see the match from TheSaintDoom's perspective as you see him play Forest into turn 1 Arbor Elf on the play. When you look at this, Shane, was TheSaintDoom sort of playing down the power that his deck brings to bear in this game, or should he really be worried about that much spot removal from Capolo?
Yeah, I have to admit, Sean, I've been on TheSaintDoom's perspective, just, playing these creatures into tons and tons of removal spells, just being concerned about, what can I play into this to maybe bait something out. I have a hard time imagining TheSaintDoom winning this match. I have to say we see a Path to Exile already taking out the Arbor Elf to not let him do some ramping there. And I think that's going to be the story of this matchup, to be honest with you. I think unless Capolo just mulls into oblivion, has to keep some sketchy hands, I think that they are going to see a lot of removal, a lot of snapback removal, and just ultimately win in the face of the relative lack of disruption that TheSaintDoom has to offer, especially even during sideboarded games.
Yeah, you could see the mini happy dance that TheSaintDoom just did with the thumbs up in the video. That was an awkward Path to Exile that Capolo had to deal with. He would have much rather that been, Lightning Bolt, Lightning Helix, so he could take the Druid out clean. Pathing it on his own turn would have given the Forest available to TheSaintDoom to untap with anyway. So TheSaintDoom's sort of ramp plan was fully online because of that path in the hand rather than another removal spell. Now you see an early Teferi, and it looks like he's going to be able to, I'm going to say protect it in air quotes because of the lack of interaction from Capolo. And now Karn comes down. Capolo still on 2 lands. And this seems like an early salvo that the game could go TheSaintDoom's way.
Yeah, I mean, if Capolo has no remand, no force of negation, not able to counter these powerful planeswalkers that TheSaintDoom is playing onto the battlefield, and if you're stuck on lands and don't have any ability to disrupt what's going on, this is a good way for TheSaintDoom to take a win.
TheSaintDoom going to force the issue here with the Pithing Needle, and now Capolo has to go for it so that he doesn't get blown out by the name on this Pithing Needle. And importantly, Karn, he still has the ability to go fetch something else from the board here without ticking up on the next turn. So if Doom feels like he can go for this and get the lattice, this could be a key turn in the game right now.
Let's see. So feels forced to play the Lightning Helix here to get rid of the Karn the Great Creator to stop additional value and stop the lattice like you just mentioned.
Key Lightning Helix from Capolo. Team Fire, of course, coming into night 2 of week 2 up just 1 match, 8-7 after 3 nights of play in season 1 of the Modern Streamers League.
Not Not
Nissa?
exactly the Oath of Nissa hit that Saint Doom was looking for. I think he would have preferred to maybe try to combo off with the Vizier of Remedies and Devoted Druid. Not that he has too much to do with the mana right now, but at least the Arbor Elf does give him some additional ramp.
Using Teferi to put the Oath back in his hand, looking to dive deeper into his deck. Now double Oath. Those are legendary, so he'll just keep one.
Mm-hmm. You can tell that Saint Doom has practiced with this deck. His speed of play is quite quick. It's impressive to see him. I saw him actually. I watched him stream this deck just yesterday, I think, during the day.
Yeah, he tends to spend his time either counting to 6 to get Titan out or trying to lattice people with Karn. So that's just a little look into the psychographic that Saint Doom really brings to the table.
All right, well, Capolo is looking like they are beginning to stabilize just a bit. I honestly don't know how they will win through the Pithing Needle just yet. I don't know if they have anything main deck that can deal with that. I'm looking. They could bounce it, of course, so they could eventually bounce it with Time Raveler when they're ready to go off.
Now the Shalai for Saint Doom, and that's an angle that we talked a little bit about with Francisco on Monday night, that the Titan, Karn, Amulet, no matter which version that you play, really brings to the table with the advent of Saheeli being included, is that you've got this alternate beatdown plan. And because of the early mana ramp, we see Saint Doom in the luxury position of next turn being able to turn these creatures sideways if he chooses, with help from the Saheeli pump, in order to really turn the heat up early against Capolo.
Saint Doom's mind's getting a little blown. I think he's got to be pleased with the way this game is going. His board looks pretty good. He's got a Teferi Time Reveler providing additional value. He's got a Pithing Needle naming the key card on the combo from the other side from Capolo. Until, really what he has to do is hope that Teferi Time Reveler can't bounce that back to his hand at some point and go off in the same turn.
Take out of Shalai. And now Doom just waiting. I think when both players in this matchup have Teferi on board, it actually hurts Capolo more because his deck wants to play at instant speed as a control type shell much more than Doom wants to play as an instant speed control type shell on his side. He's trying to do the most powerful thing. And once you obviate sort of instant speed removal and the ability to play counter spells, I think it's a bigger impact on the Saheeli combo deck by far.
Yeah, I definitely would agree on that. When, you prefer, Capolo would prefer to be using their mana to remove creatures during Saint Doom's turn, of course, and then untap with a bunch of mana available to them. But they're simply not able to do it with the Teferi sitting on the other side, like you mentioned.
That Pithing Needle on Saheeli to prevent the combo that Shane mentioned a moment ago. And now the extra card draw from Capolo on the last turn, ticking down to Fury. And Saint Doom knows that he's able to go for the Karn unobstructed on the other side. Now, what will he choose here to end the game?
Well, Saint Doom looks like he has access to 5 mana, given the Utopia Sprawled Forest, the 2 Temple Gardens, and the Uncracked Windswept Heath. So it looks like he's counting on what he wants to do here exactly.
Looks like he's going to go for a Walking Ballista, take out the Snapcaster Mage, and then maybe next turn he's got the Teferi on 4, bounce it back to his hand and get another crack at it. I mean, these are all powerful plays that Saint Doom is lining up right now.
Yeah, one of the things that I heard Saint Doom talking about is just how flexible Teferi Time Raveler really is in a deck like this, because it just has so much incidental value. And we see him shaking his head at a Narset Parter of Veils.
I don't know why he'd be worried about it. I think part of that, Jake, is that's not going to be good enough because Arbor Elf is essentially Soul Ring at this point. Now he's not going to get the full combo. You see the frown from Doom as he realizes that Lightning Bolt is going to take away Karn, the great creator. But with the mana engine that he's starting to assemble, this Walking Ballista looks like it's going to be able to pretty much rule the battlefield.
Yeah, I mean, he gets to untap with it, and Teferi Time Raveler keeps Capolo from interacting on his turn. So he has the flexibility to kind of do what he wants and not really worry about dealing with removal.
And keep in mind, Teferi says your opponents just can't play spells unless they could play a sorcery. You can still activate the abilities of creatures. So that's one of the good things about Walking Ballista. It can still give you some ability to interact with the board, even under a Teferi.
And here's a card that can do some work for TheSaintDoom. You can get it out of any burn-based removal pretty quickly with a Scavenging Ooze by just kind of scavenging up those graveyards. Of course, you can still eat a path, but it can get really big really quickly and provide a pretty decent clock.
Attacking the Teferi off the board, that'll give Doom Teferi supremacy for right now. And he'll take Nahiri down to 1 with the Walking Ballista, meaning that Capolo can't activate the Nahiri for the extra card this turn, or the Narset. Excuse me.
He doesn't want to let Capolo get that additional value off the Narset, so putting it at 1 effectively makes it useless. Besides the static ability, of course.
Coming up during sideboards, we'll get a chance to talk with Shane from the Dive Down a little about the podcast, about what he's up to in Modern right now as he helps us navigate these matches here in day 2, week 2. Of the Modern Streamers League, a third Oath of Nissa. He's been digging deep all night so far, Shane.
Oh, he hits the Karn. Doesn't even need to go for the infinite mana combo, I think, at this point. While he has the Vizier in hand, he had the opportunity to take the Devoted Druid, but I think he wanted the immediate battlefield impact of the Karn the Great Creator.
Now, this is an interesting turn. TheSaintDoom can certainly kill the Narset. Is he ready to use the Teferi bounce on his own Walking Ballista to replay it with more, essentially, shots in the chamber? Having already used the Arbor Elf and the Ramp Land, maybe this isn't the turn that he wants to go for that combo, but certainly has the ability to end this game much quicker than you would think by attacking with that large Walking Ballista, then picking it up, replaying it, and shooting down Capolo for the rest. And it should be noted, 5 green sources up right now for TheSaintDoom if he wants to start activating Scavenging Ooze. That's going to be enough. Capolo's going to throw in the towel on game 1. We get set for sideboards, and game 2 coming up here on match 1. On the second day of week 2 of the Modern Streamers League. Team Ice is in desperate need to regroup. They were nearly skunked 4-1 on Monday night as Team Fire came roaring back to take a 1-match lead 8-7 as we start the first round here on the second night of week 2. I'm Sean. He's Shane from the Dive Down. Modern for the casual spike. Those are 2 psychographics that would seem to be an oxymoron, Shane, to some players. What's the casual spike, and how did you guys put together the Dive Down?
So I'll answer the casual spike is someone that me and the other co-hosts we see as a player who likes keeping up with the game. They like winning. They like playing well. They might hit up their local FNM or a Modern night a few times a month or even, every week. But they might not have the time to grind leagues. They might not have the time to, play at GPs. It's someone who might have a pet deck that's not really tier 1, but they just love playing it. They just love bringing it to the store every week. But really more importantly, I think that we define the casual spike as people who understand that it's most important to keep having fun playing the game that we all love and keep learning and be open to learning new things and experiencing new things and not just be stubborn in your opinions. And so that's the people that we really wanted to gear the podcast towards. We've loved the engagement with the players and the opportunity just to be part of the Magic podcast community.
Episode 31 just came out recently. Now with 31 episodes under your belt, if people are looking to start a podcast, what have you learned, maybe just a nugget or 2 that you would share with them from sort of ramping this up to reality to now 31 episodes in?
I think the number one thing is be dedicated. I think you have to do it every week. It's something that you just have to take the time and work with your co-hosts, work with your community, and just keep grinding it, because the more you do it, the more comfortable you get doing it, the more often you're putting something out into the world, the more opportunities you have for people to latch onto it, to identify it, to build a community with those people. So I think like anything, it takes practice, and it takes regular practice. And we've had a lot of great luck interacting with the Modern Magic community on Reddit, with Twitter, and that's been awesome.
Game 2 just about to start. Capolo will be on the with Saheeli Jeskai combo. Before we see that first play, I know right now some viewers have their phone out. They've got their podcast app open. Where do they find you so they can hit save on the dive down?
We are, as far as I know, everywhere you can find a podcast. So if you use Spotify, you can find us there. We're on Google Podcasts. We're on any podcast app via RSS, via Apple Podcasts, all those things. Search for the Dive Down. You should be able to find us. Also on our webpage, there are links, I think, to every kind of major podcast outlet that should take you right there as well, which is thedivedown.com.
Omnipresent. The dive down.
We're trying to be.
And you don't have the ability to grind every day with it. It's a great cast to keep up with what's going on. And I think, as Shane said, keep having fun with what you love. Right now, Capolo having a little bit more fun than he did in game 1. He's hit his Celestial Colonnade on turn 1. He has his mana that he wants with the Mountain here on turn 2. And we're not going to see the blazing start from TheSaintDoom that we did in game 1 either, with TheSaintDoom up 1-0.
For sure. I mean, TheSaintDoom was able to take advantage of a minor mana stumble from Capolo and get a lot of early value out of both Karn the Great Creator and Teferi Time Raveler. So I'm hesitant to say that we'll see that happen here again, but TheSaintDoom, that's kind of what he has to lean on again here, looking at his hand. He has a little bit of early creature interaction with Path to Exile, but also you see a pair of Teferi Time Ravelers and a Karn the Great Creator that he can hope to get something going with. Well, we see already Saheeli Rai on the other side of the battlefield.
That's threatening if you're TheSaintDoom now, because he has the path in his hand, but it also means he has to hold up the mana for that path. And the only white he can come up with here is Horizon Canopy. So now this is going to inhibit his ability to do anything other than this Scavenging Ooze here on turn 2. He certainly would have loved to go Teferi there and set up for Karn, but with the presence of Saheeli, you can't take the chance that you're going to lose the game straight out.
Nope. If only Teferi Time Raveler could also bounce opposing Planeswalkers, but it's already kind of busted enough.
I think it's more than good enough right now. You give it the chance to bounce Planeswalkers, and we're talking about a card that's even more format warping than it is already.
Yeah, the Time Cop does put in work. We don't need to give him some overtime.
Okay, now I need somebody to alter one with a Jean-Claude Van Damme on it, since you brought that up. I hadn't thought about that. 4 mana for the Jeskai Saheeli deck. Saheeli up to 5, and TheSaintDoom looking for answers on his side here. He's going to get to go with Teferi and start to pull himself back into this game. But until Capolo goes for it, TheSaintDoom's going to have to essentially sit on that 1 white mana every turn in order to represent that path to exile. Now, he has it in this case, but if you don't represent it, you just open the floodgates wide open for this combo deck.
Yeah, I mean, this feels, okay, we see a Force of Negation, take out the Teferi Time Raveler. I mean, it totally feels like playing against Twin back in the day. You just always have to either represent something or hold something up and just hope that you can keep the opponent from double spelling you or having their own counter spell.
So you bring up a great point. For those who didn't play during the Twin era, it was this sort of bifurcated deck with 2 devastating lines of attack. Is this Saheeli combo deck, in your mind, Shane, sort of the spiritual heir to that deck because of the 2 lines of play it can play on? And it's so devastating when it takes one of those lines.
For sure. It's hard for me to say, like, is this the new Twin? Because people are always trying to reinvent some kind of Twin. We see a quick counter spell. We see Snapcaster Mage, likely flashing back the Force of Negation here, yes. So yeah, to answer the question, I think it definitely does play a lot like Twin, right? Where it's like at any time, once it's a little more obvious, right? When we have the Saheeli Rai on the board, but I think that's it for people who like coming off in that fashion. So now we see Capolo with all this mana available. to them, they could potentially cast a Felidar Guardian and hold up counter magic.
Well, and with the ability to activate Celestial Colonnade
Just going for it.
Snapcaster Mage, I think right now SaintDoom has to have in his mind that it's going to take a lot to play and defend a Karn the Great Creator at this point, because the Lattice combo is great, but it only works if Karn's on the board.
For sure. How much damage do we see Saheeli Rai do just with her uptick?
It's been good, as she's been augmenting the Snapcaster beats here in game 2. I like the play from Capolo to force the use of the Path to Exile there, because Doom had to basically pick his poison. Mm-hmm. Did he want to take the extra 4 and go to 1, knowing that he's dead to Saheeli, or does he use it up and say, okay, now I'm open to the combo, but at least I'm not dead on board?
Yeah, so SaintDoom's able to cast the Karn the Great Creator, get Pithing Needle down to prevent the combo, but I don't know how much time he has left with just the Snapcaster beats and the Saheeli Rai upticks, although that's taken off the table, of course. But there's plenty of burn available for Capolo and just, attacking you with a Snapcaster. Although I wager at this point he's forced to bounce Snapcaster with Teferi.
That's got to feel horrible, doesn't it? You bring in your Teferi to bounce a Snapcaster Mage? Got to dig deeper with the Oath of Nissa.
Yeah, chooses just to maybe untap and cast out a blocker of some sort.
Well, and Capolo gave him that flexibility by going after Karn the last turn instead of putting SaintDoom to 1 with an attack from Snapcaster, or rather to 2 with an attack from Snapcaster and a tick up from Saheeli.
Yeah,
Doom started on 5 that turn when Capolo untapped. It was 5 because we were talking about the presence of the Celestial Colonnade.
Sure. If he doesn't attack into the Karn gets the ability to down tick again fairly easily. Actually, I think Karn's minus is hilariously only a -2, so it doesn't even prevent that. So I'm curious about that attack. I'm not sure exactly why that took place, but I'm sure Capolo knows more than I do.
Well, I think he goes right after Doom, and Doom's deciding whether or not he has to block, because if he takes the 2 and Capolo has a way to bounce the Pithing Needle, then the game's over because he upticks Shalai and Doom's dead. So where does SaintDoom choose to go in this situation?
Yeah, he's in a tough spot. He's looking at his sideboard right now to say, what can I, if Karn survives, what can I minus and grab?
I would think an appealing choice would be the Wormcoil Engine if you're just worried about life total.
Entirely. And then that's a pretty good clock. Like if Capolo does not have the combo, then he does have a 3-turn clock. And also if Karn the Great Creator does stay on the battlefield, he could animate Pithing Needle if he so chose. He probably wouldn't in this case, but that would reduce the clock to 2 turns if there wasn't a Snapcaster Mage on the other side of the board.
SaintDoom electing not to go to 1 and take the chance that Capolo can get rid of that Pithing Needle and just end the game on the spot.
So let's look at this draw from SaintDoom. Just a Misty Rainforest.
So he can go get whatever he wants, but he won't have the Karn. So the Lattice play really isn't of any value to him here without Karn on the board.
Not at all. And not enough mana to really do anything serious with Walking Ballista. He could, of course, clear the Snapcaster Mage, but can't do much against the Saheeli. So like you said, I do agree that Wormcoil Engine was probably his strongest play here.
That would have just been a 3/3 Walking Ballista. So now I wonder what Capolo's reaction is to seeing this. Karn's off the board. There's no Lattice coming down anytime soon. You've got him at 2. Any Lightning Bolt, any Lightning Helix is good enough. And Serum Visions is better than even a redraw.
So SaintDoom just forced to cross his fingers here that Capolo is not going to draw into the combo, because his only interaction, if you could call it that, is an Oath of Nissa, which doesn't interact at all. Ooh, the worst card to see as a Wormcoil Engine player. And SaintDoom just concedes with lethal on the board.
That'll tie it up. That was a lot of outs there for Capolo, let's be honest. Anything that would have killed the Pithing Needle, would have probably given it to him. Any path, any direct damage in the form of Lightning Helix, Lightning Bolt, anything along those lines were going to be enough to take game 2, as he really did a good job of setting it up early, controlling what SaintDoom could sort of get on board and manage before he got to a critical mass like in game 1.
Yeah, I think it was well played. I think SaintDoom did the best that he could with the cards that were in his hand and in his deck, honestly, because even in the sideboard, SaintDoom doesn't have a ton of great options to really interact besides, the Path to Exiles, the Winds of Abandon, although that operates at sorcery speed, so that's not going to do great work for him.
Shane from the Dive Down, our guest this week on the Modern Streamers League. Dave, Stanislav, and Zach are your castmates on the Dive Down. Who's the best player on the podcast?
Ooh, that's a spicy question. I like going for it, Sean. Honestly, I think the player who I've seen improve the most this year, and honestly since starting the podcast, is Stan. Stan's doing some great work. He really grinds his local events. He's always at the game store. He's always thinking about the game, and I've been really impressed with his ability to improve. Dave is the most experienced player. I've known Dave since I was in 2nd grade. And he's been playing Magic for most of those years. And I think Zach is the strongest player at his specialty archetypes, which include Skred and Red Prison. And, myself, I actually keep track of my stats, Sean. I am the preeminent average player in Magic. I'm like a 49, 51% player across the entire calendar year. So that's a little bit about our play.
Back when they used ELO, you were the guy who got your initial number and then just stayed there forever. It never moved up or down with that 49 to 51%.
I mean, no, you can see your ELO more or less on Magic Online, and you know where mine is? 1600, right where you start.
That's exactly where you start. Speaking of
we see a great start by SaintDoom.
Off to a running start with the first turn Arbor Elf and the ability to make 4 on turn 2. That's going to give him a turn 2 Teferi time.
No, I was predicting this because Force of Negation, so powerful right now, really does a lot of work in those early turns. I think it's such a well-designed card.
Snapcaster, though, the price was heavy, but I think you have to answer that Teferi on turn 2. That's really the first time we've seen Force of Negation used in its force mode. It's really been canceled the last couple of times we've seen it. People have just paid the 3 mana straight up.
What's great about this, too, is look at what it did to SaintDoom's Ewit. Because Force of Negation exiles the spell, he's unable to get that additional value off that Eternal Witness.
Just in for 1 with the Arbor Elf as the backup plan. Now, granted, this is one of the reasons that the deck is so powerful in the Druid Karn deck that SaintDoom is playing, is that the sort of plan E, if you will, is these kind of small creature beats, but it allows you to at least move the tempo of the game forward in a most oftentimes meaningful way until that gets set back. Now, you might wonder why the Teferi picks the Arbor Elf there. Well, by making it have to be recast, you slow down the ability to produce the extra mana on Doom's side as well.
Yeah, that's really not the play I don't think he would have loved to make, because this just allows Vizier to attack in and take it off the board. But like you said, it does stop that really huge ramp ability. But, SaintDoom's still able to play that Karn the Great Creator, minus it, and grab the Pithing Needle.
I wonder if the Elf had stayed on board, if SaintDoom would have maybe gone for Lattice in the Wind there, because with a land here, he would have been able to make the 7 mana on this turn. Mm-hmm. But without the Elf, that was out the door, and best to defend yourself from the combo kill. Pick up the Pithing Needle, and now SaintDoom, I think you saw his reaction as we watched the matches from Team Ice's perspective all week this week in week 2 of the Modern Streamers League. I think that was a combination of surprise and disgust when he saw Ashiok come down.
Yeah, I mean, Ashiok takes one of his pass to the combo off in Finale of Devastation. But I'm curious, so spells and abilities your opponents control can't cause their controller to search their library. So, yeah, I think really what it does is for searching your library, the only thing I think he's searching for is going to be fetch lands and Finale of Devastation creatures. Am I missing something?
I don't think so, because I think Oath of Nissa gets around that. It doesn't search the library. You look at your top 3 cards and then put one of them into your hand that meets the criteria of the Oath. So I believe it goes around both Narset and Ashiok in that case.
Yeah, I think it might not do enough against TheSaintDoom right now. Like I said, it will take the Finale of Devastation combo off the board, but I don't really think that's what TheSaintDoom is relying on this game.
Well, you got blown out by the Path to Exile in a timely manner. It ended the game in game 2. Do you go for the Wormcoil Engine again here, or do you just wait and see if you can untap with Karn and an active Arbor Elf? Because if that's the case, I think the play would be Lattice. Arbor Elf can actually make, 6 off of the 1 land.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Anger of the Gods.
Brutal. TheSaintDoom wincing.
That looked like, somebody just squeezed a lemon into a paper cut if you watch Doom's reaction.
Yeah, that does take his ability to generate a huge amount of mana off the board. And again, because it exiles, Eternal Witness is just sitting there with not a great ability to generate much value for him.
Now the Knight of Autumn, a 4/3 to go after the life total for Capolo here. Capolo on the Jeskai Saheeli combo deck. We saw him pick up game 2. And a shout out to Capolo, by the way. We actually recorded his extra turns segment before broadcast time this evening, and we'll have that coming up for you next week here on the Modern Streamers League. Week 3, which is our wild card week on the first half of the season, and it's going to be Singleton next week. Have you taken on the challenge of putting a Singleton deck together in Modern, Shane?
I have not. I hadn't even really heard of the format until I saw the lineup, the schedule for this, rather. But once I saw some of these decks, I mean, I don't know if I'm allowed to talk about these if they're out yet, but man, some of these Singletons are outrageous.
It's going to be a whole lot of fun to watch that next week. TheSaintDoom trying to navigate through and see how he wants to use his Karn, which is up to 5. The Pithing Needle stopping the combo right now. I think that has to be the de facto use for Pithing Needle in this matchup.
For real. I can't imagine what else you want to do with it. So
it always feels very unsafe, though, against white-red decks, because they so easily now, with many of the modal spells like a Braid, and then you have things like Cryptic Command to bounce it, it feels like Pithing Needle is most tenuous against these decks.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the sideboard and main deck of Capolo, it looks like the main way that they have to get the Pithing Needle off the board is with an engineered explosives or Teferi bouncing it. And so right now, I think it's going to stick on the board, barring any lucky draws off the top.
Path, looking at the Walking Ballista. Artifact, creature, or enchantment. Those all 3 eligible targets for Teferi to bounce. So even more tenuous with that Pithing Needle on board. Another path.
Yeah, we finally see some way for TheSaintDoom to get some value off this Eternal Witness that's just been not necessarily rotting in his hand, but waiting for a prime opportunity to get some value here. So now, potentially, TheSaintDoom has the ability to untap, cast the E-Wit, play the Walking Ballista, and get that Felidar Guardian off the board. Actually, I don't think he can, because a Felidar Guardian is a 1/4. It would take a 4/4 Walking Ballista, which takes 8 mana.
And without the Arbor Elf to supercharge the mana, he's going to be short. 7, it looks like, available right now, and he played the land for the turn.
Feels obligated to go for the Lattice, so let's see what Capolo has remaining in hand.
Yeah, this is a naked run out. No backup if Capolo has the counterspell. Now, if there is the ability to destroy it once it's in play, you can tap the mana with Lattice on the stack.
Ooh, looks like it resolves.
And TheSaintDoom breathes a sigh of relief as he looks to put Team Ice back on level footing, 8-8 in matches here in round 1 of night 2 of week 2 of the Modern Streamers League. This match tied 1 game apiece. This is game 3. Felidar Guardian cracking in. I think this is an easy block for Knight.
Yeah, I wonder if we're going to start seeing some Lattice beats with the Karn Plus.
That really shortens the clock, doesn't it?
just a 2-turn clock.
SaintDoom exhaling. And if he was Red Auerbach, I think he'd be lighting up the victory cigar right now. I believe this one is all over with Karn.
Yeah.
Able
And
to plus the lattice.
Karn's also now out of even being attacked by the Felidar Guardian, and now with a couple blockers, doesn't even matter.
Yeah, that was the key block the turn before, because Felidar Guardian with just 1 power, not really able to keep Karn in check as long as Karn's on the board.
SaintDoom just kind of piloting on here. Lattice beats have to be the best way to win once you have the lock.
It probably, tingles more than any other win once you have the lockdown. And this seems wholly unbelievable that Capolo could find his way out here against the fully assembled lock from Druid Karn. SaintDoom with his hands together, the lands useless for Capolo.
I have to say, I'm extremely impressed with SaintDoom's ability to pull out the win here. I think that I'm curious if, on the other side, what Capolo's feeling like. Maybe they just didn't draw the spells they needed to interact. But I am seeing what SaintDoom says, where all of these cards have so much value in and of themselves. You don't need to have the combo to pull off the win. You just get the value off of your Karn the Great Creators, off of your Teferi Time Cops. It's a powerful deck.
Congratulations to TheSaintDoom and Team Ice playing during the Modern Streamers League for the Cancer Research Institute. They tie up our running match standings at 8 wins apiece for each team, Team Fire and Team Ice, by taking match 1 here this evening. It was SaintDoom on Druid Karn taking down the Jeskai Saheeli combo deck for Capolo 42. He's Shane from the Dive Down. I'm Sean. Thanks to our sponsors for helping us bring you the latest in modern tech and advance the game of Modern, whether you play it digitally or you play it with the old school cardboard cards. Card Hoarder and Card Kingdom, they've got everything you need for your latest Modern creation. Or if you're thinking, wow, I just watched Lattice attack for the win, I'm going to need some of those. Card Hoarder, Card Kingdom, they can hook you up with everything you need to play SaintDoom's Druid Karn deck that you just saw take down round 1 here this evening. Coming up, another forecast of doom as we get ready for round 2. Team Fire going to send out Matt Hurley on Hex Drinker Jund. He'll take on Sspiderspace on Thalia Stompy. You heard Guano Maestro talk about it at the beginning of the broadcast tonight. He loves the Thalia Stompy deck. We'll talk about it a little bit later when he rejoins us. More from Shane from the Dive Down on the Modern Streamers League. Coming up next as we continue night 2 of week 2 on the Modern Streamers League.
Welcome to the Forecast of Doom. Here we have Sspiderspace with Thalia Stompy and Matt with the Tryhards on Hex Drinker Jund, a deck that you saw me play against last week. This Thalia Stompy deck at first looks like just a traditional taxes list, and in that case, Jund would be heavily favored. However, this Thalia Stompy deck has goyfs of their own. Thought-Knot Seer and Reality Smasher are the key cards, in my opinion, from Sspiderspace's side Game 1, Game 2, and maybe even Game 3. Having creatures that are as big or maybe even bigger than Goyf are what Gabriel from Sspiderspace is going to be looking for. Now, once we get to things a little bit A little bit deeper, Leonin Arbiter can also be a quick tempo play with Ghost Quarter and maybe even some Dismembers to lock out tryhards if he has a lot of fetched lands. Just like any other taxes deck, that is certainly a possibility. On Matt's side, the big key cards are Assassin's Trophy, those removal spells, Tarmogoyf, which can get much bigger than even a Reality Smasher, and Plague Engineer, which can not only kill a Thalia, but can also block a Smasher or a Thought-Knot Seer. The sideboard cards coming in for Thalia Stompy is probably just going to be that Karn, because Karn generates a lot of value on his own. On Matt's side, he has Fulminator Mage and additional Assassin's Trophies, which are spells that can hit Thalia Stompy's creatures. This is definitely going to be an interesting matchup with Big Smash versus Big Smash. Let's see how it all plays out.
Round 2 about to get underway. It's going to be Sspiderspace on Thalia Stompy and Matt Hurley on Hex Drinker Jund. We should say congratulations to TheSaintDoom with that win in round 1. He became the first member of Team Ice in the Modern Streamers League to be 2-0, and now Sspiderspace a chance to do just that, as he had the win over Visquis 87 last week in week 1. Quick start already for Sspiderspace as we're watching the match from Team Ice's point of view. He's got the early Thought-Knot Seer that is backed up by the turn 1 Chalice on 1. That is a play that's good in any format in which it's legal, I feel like, Shane.
Oh my goodness, yeah. Chalice of the Void, super powerful card. Ideally, you're playing it on turn 1 if you can in this deck, but Spiderfish will take it on turn 2.
Back to back Thought-Knot Seers.
Just brutal.
Those Thought-Knot Seers really make Dark Confidant feel underwhelming when they come down back to back like that, because it's going to take now Matt Hurley 2 turns to recoup the card disadvantage, because he's not close right now to killing one of these Thought-Knot Seers and drawing the extra card at that point.
All right, so Seasoned Pyromancer comes down. He decides to pitch. He pitched a Dark Confidant and a Lightning Bolt. Is that correct, to make those 2 elemental tokens?
Mm-hmm.
Quickly eats a Dismember.
Now, the one even up card is going to be Plague Engineer. Plague Engineer was really the all-star on Monday night here on week 2, as we saw multiple rock decks battle with it and use it to stonewall opposing Tarmogoyfs all night long. Plague Engineer's ability to leverage its Death Touch is going to be just as good against Eldrazi, especially the ones that come in without Trample. The only thing you really have to worry about there is Reality Smasher.
A turn 2 late, here comes this Chalice of the Void on 2. That would have stopped both the Harsh Mentor and the Tarmogoyf. Look at how quickly Tryhards is able to set up a blocker that stops Thought-Knot Seer pretty cold.
What do you think about the use of Harsh Mentor? This was sort of the spice talk of week 1 after Matt played. Matt Hurley, formerly my broadcast partner with the Tryhards podcast. You see that on his name as he plays for Team Fire. What do you think about the use, Shane, of Harsh Mentor? Is this a card that's on the cusp of being good in Modern, or is Matt, who's known for being very cute with some of his picks, just being too cute as we see the aforementioned Plague Engineer come down?
So you know what? I would have formerly said that a card like this is a little bit too cute, but in a prison strategy this past weekend, my co-host Zach got a lot of value off of the new red ley line. I know it's a very different card type, but having a lot of pinging damage that does incidental work like that, it adds up. I don't know if it's best in this shell. I think it might be a pretty cute choice, but I know that cards like this can do more work than people give them the credit for.
So right now, the Jund player, Matt Hurley, looking like a lot of his options were going to be cut off with Sspiderspace putting Chalice on 1 and Chalice on 2 out, but you've got Liliana Last Hope. That might be why we haven't seen Thalia dispensed so far, as Last Hope can take care of that very cleanly. You can also shrink down the Thought-Knot Seer, and now Bloodbraid Elf, and you see Spiderspace's reaction, hands to the head, and this is the advantage of Jund. If you get to turn 4, 5, 6, they can start doing things that are individually better than you for the most part. Maybe this Eldrazi deck could be the exception because it can bring Thought-Knot Seer and Reality Smasher, but Jund right now, one of the few decks that's not going to be sort of 85% turned off by Chalice on 1, Chalice on 2.
I mean, it doesn't really help that Sspiderspace has drawn, 7 of their lands so far. But yeah, you have to keep asking, like, where did all these cards come from on the Jund player side? They don't even have a Dark Confidant out.
And Bloodbraid Elf, we see Cascade into Abrupt Decay, and that is going to be the concession from Sspiderspace. There was just a hair of a video difficulty on this from Sspiderspace, so we're going to jump right into game 2. And of course, in Magic, Shane, if you're new to the game, can't beats can, and so the Abrupt Decay was going to be able to hit whatever it want. Didn't matter that there was a Chalice on 2 already on board.
Yeah, so he has the advantage of being on the play again, does Sspiderspace, but nothing truly broken to do yet. I think the best thing that they're hoping for is perhaps ramping out a turn 4 Karn Scion of Urza.
He can get that with the pitch of Simian Spirit Guide coming up next turn, but we see a red and 6 right now from Jund, and Sspiderspace already adjusting the glasses as he is, I think, a little bit nervous about what might be going on the Jund side after he was overwhelmed in game 1. Raging Ravine, and now back to Sspiderspace as this match is progressing quickly. The Rest in Peace will really make Tarmogoyf just into an 0-1, but you have to wonder how many of those the Jund deck kept in, knowing that Sspiderspace had the ability, because of known deck lists, to go to that Rest in Peace.
Yeah, I mean, it does lock off Ren and 6's ability to continually let you hit those land drops. But look, does he even need this? He's already to 4 lands. He's got the Planeswalker that's upticking and already attacking with a Bloodbraid Elf. Hits the Fulminator Mage. It's going to do some work on Sspiderspace's mana base. I think that Karn Scion of Urza is really hoping to kind of generate some card advantage by the uptick, but we'll see how much value he can really get out of that.
Sspiderspace, hands on his forehead. He lost the Temple on the last turn, and that's only going to matter if he starts seeing Eldrazi, because he hasn't seen much action. Sspiderspace went from really being land flooded in game 1 to being action light here in game 2. We see another ramp piece. You don't want to cast Simian Spirit Guide for 3 and be beaten with a 2/2 monkey. That never feels like it's a good line of play. And you see Thalia once again stonewalled by Red and 6, being able to deal out 1 damage to any target. And the Planeswalkers right now from Jund have really held one of the key cards for Thalia Stompy, the namesake of the deck, in place.
Is he just baiting him into using the minus on Thalia?
Now Thalia come in. She'll be chumped on the way in by Dark Confidant and a Thought-Knot Seer on the stack. So a chance for Sspiderspace to start to turn this around. The life total still very high, and the Jund deck unable to go to its graveyard for some repeat value cards. And of course, Lean and Arbiter on board as well.
So Sspiderspace able to see the cards that are remaining in the Jund player's hand. It's just triple land and a single lightning bolt. So he has a chance to make a little bit of a comeback here.
And neither one of these players drawing very much gas here in game 2, with Jund already up a game.
Ooh, Displacer. A nice draw. Does a lot of value to stop your opponent from attacking in, and allowing this Thought-Knots here to probably start attacking in profitably.
Thought-Knot going to be shown the double block.
Yep, as I said, just able to quickly use the activated ability there. Ooh, top decks a lightning bolt, and one of his most valuable creatures is off the board. But it probably is too late, because now he's able to keep swinging in, force some blocks eventually.
The extra lean in Arbiter and Team Fire, Matt Hurley on Jund on the top of the screen, going to try and clear out as much as they can, paying for the Arbiter to fetch. Now the Seasoned Pyromancer and Liliana of the Veil. This could start to eat away rather quickly at Sspiderspace, as there's now chump blockers available to give turns to the Jund deck.
Yeah, just like that. Ooh, we're going fast here.
Both of these players just snapping through their turns. We know, Shane, that they're land light, and this is a Phyrexian Revoker that's going to be able to take down one of the 2 Planeswalkers for Jund.
Yeah, kind of forced to name Ren at 6 there. Otherwise, it would just ping it off the board.
Liliana down ticks again, and there goes The Phyrexian
Oh,
draw
so happy with
Smasher
that.
should be enough. Smasher has both haste and trample, and that's going to be the concession from John. The draw for Sspiderspace, and we are even at 1 game apiece. Again, a little video issue for Sspiderspace this week, so we won't get to watch sideboarding, but we see Sspiderspace, of course, stay with his rest in peace plan that we saw in game 2, and it really paid off for him as the Ren and 6 couldn't get going. Now Jund on the play. Can they leverage some of their better cards early? Sspiderspace looks at the Tarmogoyf but says, I've got the rest in peace. He had given that away.
They pitched that to the Gemstone Caverns to be able to get the ramp and make white mana.
But this is going to be an early, it's going to be an early, a very fast Reality Smasher, and he's got it backed up with another one here on the following turn.
How do you beat this?
Being played at a hyper pace, and John going to come up, it feels like, just short here in back-to-back weeks. Last week losing to Druid Karn. This week really fighting to stay in the game, and now you've got something. You can get some of the value creatures going, but is this still just giving the house away against the Smashers? 1 Smasher left. Here comes Karn. Will it be value? It will be. And the white source now for Sspiderspace. Sspiderspace looking to join his teammate TheSaintDoom as the only 2 members on Team Ice in the winner's circle twice, and that's going to be enough. Nothing off the top for the Jund deck and Matt Hurley of Team Fire. And Shane, at lightning speed, we saw these two play 3 intense games, and it was just enough from Thalia Stompy to overwhelm with one of their best possible draws in game 3.
Yeah, the double Reality Smasher back to back is just, for a deck that is hoping to 1-1 the opponent and then generate some 2-for-1 value late in the game. You're just crying when you're seeing Reality Smasher, which forces you to pitch something out of your hand, even just to target it.
So Reality Smasher smashes its way through Jund for Sspiderspace. Sspiderspace is now 2-0, and while Monday night was dominated by Team Fire, Team Ice is 2-0 in our first 2 rounds here on night 2 of week 2 of the Modern Streamers League, thanks to TheSaintDoom on Druid Karn, and now to Sspiderspace on Thalia Stompy. The Modern Streamers League brought to you by both Card Hoarder and Card Kingdom. We know you're here for the modern tech, but please also support your favorite teams by supporting the charities that they're playing for throughout Season 1 of the Modern Streamers League. Team Ice, who has been on an absolute roll tonight, playing for the Cancer Research Institute. They look to end all forms of cancer around the globe. And Team Fire, playing for A21. A21's mission to stop human trafficking anywhere and everywhere it still heartbreakingly occurs around the world. This is the Modern Streamers League. More Doom Tech to come. More from Shane with the dive down on the way as well. Thank you for joining us on this, the Modern Streamers League.
Welcome back to the Forecast of Doom. Team Ice is certainly representing this week, starting out 2-0. Just a little Team Ice happy dance right there. We also get to see Francisco coming in with Amulet Titan Karn, one of my absolute favorite decks, against Susurrus, who's on Karn Whir Prison. Now, historically, Prison decks absolutely demolish Amulet Titan decks, but that was before the inclusion of Karn the Great Creator. As we saw how powerful Karn can be as a toolbox effect in my match, it's also just as good in an Amulet Titan deck, and it's even better against a deck that is playing a lot of artifacts where that Stony Silence effect actually matters. The most important card in this entire match, I cannot stress this enough, is Karn the Great Creator from both sides of the table. I would not be surprised if somebody is a little bit behind, plays a Karn, and has to Pithing Needle a Karn, their own Karn as well. That is the type of game this might turn out to be. Now, on Francisco's side, obviously Karn, he can get off Ancient Stirrings just like on Susurrus' side, and that is going to be fetching different things for each player, but it can still grab that Lattice Lock. Now, key cards on Francisco's side besides Karn could be Kalni Garden, which in conjunction with Slayer's Stronghold can get under a bridge and still allow him to attack for 2 every single turn, and Engineered Explosives, which is a board wipe effect against Susurrus' artifacts. On Susurrus' side, now Torpor Orb, which can stop Primetime, can stop a post-board Reclamation Sage, Blast Zone, which destroys both Amulet and Scout, and Karn, obviously we already mentioned, and very importantly, Welding Jar, which can protect Susurrus' permanents, or at least one of them, from an Engineered Explosive effect. Now, post-board, there really aren't too many cards. I mentioned that Reclamation Sage on the Amulet Titan side, but the most important things I think in this matchup to really focus on is that this, at its heart, is a Karn versus Karn match. Let's see how this all plays out.
This is round 3 of night 2 of week 2 of the Modern Streamers League. It started with an 8-7 advantage for Team Ice in the overall, or for Team Fire in the overall standings, but back-to-back wins for Team Ice have them back on top 9-8. I'm Sean Sacres along with Shane from the Dive Down podcast, our special guest this week. Modern for the casual spike. They're everywhere that you find your podcasts. Check them out. If you're not an intense Modern grinder who has all that free time to keep up with the latest development, I think the Dive Down is going to be exactly where you want to be in the Modern format. Shane, as we take a look at this matchup, we just heard the breakdown on the Forecast of Doom. This seems to be an intense match, and we just got a master level class on Monday night from Francisco, who joined us live for most of the broadcast for the Modern Streamers League. It'll be interesting to see the master in action right now against a deck that almost seems bred to the bone to stop this Karn Titan deck.
Yeah, I watched Francisco broadcast on Monday, and I will fully admit he's going to know a lot more of what's going on with his deck than I am.
You see Francisco on Team Ice on the bottom half of the screen. Team Ice being kind enough to host for this week. It'll be back to Team Fire for our wild card week in the first half of the first Modern season. Next week, it's going to be Singleton, or as the old guys like me call it, Highlander.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a fascinating format. I can't wait to watch that next week.
It's going to be outstanding. You're going to see some cards wielded that don't usually see the light of day in Modern, I have a feeling. Now the prison pieces starting to roll out from Susurrus. Susurrus 0-1 last week. And, of course, Francisco coming in at 1-0, looking to add a third member of Team Ice to that 2-0 player list. Ancient Stirrings, and Francisco not happy with what he sees on the board right now.
So Chalice is down. Chalice comes down on 0, it appears. Am I missing a token? I don't think I am. There to wipe out the Walking Ballista.
The masterpieces on Susurrus' side. Master of the Karn Whir Prison deck. Susurrus, though, fell to Dredge in the hands of Sodek in week 1. We'll see if Susurrus can get back to his winning ways and pull Team Fire back to even. Karn, the Great Creator. You see all the alternate arts Susurrus, which, as someone who's watching this on a small-ish screen, I really appreciate.
Yeah, where's my zoom ability? I want to see this art.
Scott is hard to work on that in the background for us here on the Modern Streamers League. He'll bring that live innovation to us next.
All right, so he brings in the bridge, hoping to stop the ability for Francisco to get any attacks in.
Well, the other thing you have to keep in mind when you're watching the Whir Prison player is once they go for the bridge angle, they try to empty their hand usually as quick as possible in order to cut off all possible starts on the red zone from the other player. And that is one of the failings of this, Amulet deck is if they can't turn their Titan sideways, they're going to lose a lot of opportunities.
So we saw the Karn the Great Creator on Francisco's side take out the Chalice of the Void by turning it into a creature with 0 power and toughness.
That is a heady play from the master, Francisco. You see him hosting there on the bottom half for Team Ice.
I just realized I was speaking of Chalice of the Void as if it was an engineered explosives, but yeah, he just had it on 0 to stop those powerful pact spells.
Both players going to be able to use Karn the Great Creator to great effect. We see most of the Karn the Great Creator decks have settled finally, Shane, on about 7 sideboard slots to give them choices during game 1. What's your experience been like? And have you seen the modern metagame coalesce that 7 is the number? Because that was up for debate for a while. We saw 5, we saw 9, and now the community seems to have settled on about.
Yeah, I think it really depends on the deck you're playing, right? Like Mono Green Tron, I think you can run a few more than some of these other decks. Like Mono Green can maybe run something maybe like 10 to 11 while keeping in cards like Thought-Knot Seer or Thragtusk for your life gain. So you still want to be able to cast, put those in during the sideboard, but you can have a lot of your sideboard cards exist as your artifacts for your wish board. And a deck like Eldrazi Tron can additionally run a whole lot of their sideboard as a wish board, simply because they didn't have a lot of great sideboard options in the first place. But, we see Francisco, he wants to keep a good amount of interactive spells, like his counter spells, his Reclamation Sage as a removal spell, the Path as his removal, and Hornet Queen is just a potential game-ending threat. So I think that, I think that Francisco obviously wants to have a number of wishboard cards that can do some work, but also keep enough interaction to protect his ability to execute his game plan.
Another 0 casting cost artifact going to be taken out by Karn on Susurus's side. And you mentioned that it's going to be interesting to watch who can leverage Karn best. TheSaintDoom said it in the Forecast of Doom. This matchup really was viewed as a huge advantage for Prison until Karn the Great Creator was printed. And now it feels like it's at least 50-50, if not swinging the other way. And that's because so many of the artifacts that the Prison deck wants to play can come in at 0, can be destroyed on an uptick for an opposing Karn. And this is something that is going to be maybe not a hole in the game plan for Whir Prison, but it's going to be a soft piece of armor that they're not used to having that sort of soft spot to.
Heads up card to have in your sideboard and heads up card to grab here by Susurus. Sorcerer Spyglass almost has to name Karn the Great Creator. Yes, and it does.
Powerful. Start leveraging mana for Francisco. If he just can't go anywhere else, he can always build up the Walking Ballista. We see him already with 3, 4, 5 power on the board.
Yeah, with Susurus is forced to get Sorcerer Spyglass there almost, and so is unable to use it to name Walking Ballista, which gives Francisco the ability, like you said, to slowly build up the Walking Ballista to probably initially start doing some. Let's see, 2 cards in hand. Yeah, probably just have to do the ping plan.
This is going to be Thalia West, Transmute. That could put the number of cards back up to 3, which would turn on the attack from Azusa. That'll be out the window as they 0 mana cost artifact comes down for Susurrus.
Yeah, so 2 cards in hand.
Bobble.
I think that Francisco does have a surprising number of options here. I'm trying to think if he has the ability to engineered explosives that bridge at some point. I think he has the colors to do it. He just has to eventually be able to maybe transmute into it. That would speed his clock along.
2 cards in hand right now, so he can get in for up to 3 if he puts 1 more counter on the Ballista. That takes Susurrus to 15. But that's not much block.
I mean, what he'll probably be able to do slowly is, even if there were fewer cards in Susurrus's hand, is swing in, then use his mana to put a counter on, and then he could remove the counter if, for example, Susurrus just is able to keep a single card in hand. Obviously, Susurrus is going to get it to the point where they have 0 cards in hand, and then he's forced just to do the slow pinging plan, of course. All right, so we see a prime time enter the battlefield, unable to attack, of course, that ensnaring bridge, but there's no Pithing Needle on the board or Torpor Orb, so he's able to use the land ability.
Now, what lands is Francisco for Team Ice thinking about here? Because, you have the ability to add power with some of the utility lands in this deck, but that flies in the face of an ensnaring bridge at that point. So it's going to be interesting on how he plans to line this up.
Yeah, so he grabbed a Thalia West, and I'm curious if my complete lack of experience with this deck may prove right, and he might transmute it for an engineered explosive, which he could then get the ensnaring bridge off the battlefield.
Well, he's going for the transmute right now.
All right, man, I got something right. Listen to my podcast, y'all.
That's exactly why we had you on, was for your inside knowledge to follow up Francisco on Monday. That's not intimidating at all, is it? To come on and comment on Francisco's match after he was talking about it on Monday.
Well, he casts it for 2. I think he just wants to get the Spyglass and, of course, a Talisman along for the ride, which then unlocks his Karn the Great Creator, which does give him more powerful options.
Now, does he go for the lattice play here? He certainly has the Amulet in play on his side with a bounce land in hand. So the 7 mana, no problem. If that's the way he decides he wants to go, instead it's going to be Crucible.
Yeah, he can then start doing some Thalia West loops.
So he's setting up for inevitability rather than explosiveness because of the presence of the bridge. You're not going to see Primeval Titan turn sideways anytime soon. Crucible of Worlds. So each bounce land, after playing out from the graveyard, the Thalia West is going to result in a Thalia West cycle, and he has plenty of targets for 0 in the deck. This is one of those sort of side door options that this deck can bring to bear.
All right, Chalice on 0, stopping future packs.
This feels like it's second best, though, to me, because if you can get that Thalia West back in your hand, you can go right away for the EE, blow up the bridge, and now all of a sudden Titan's a threat again.
Ooh, really straining Francisco's mana here with that Damping Sphere.
That's going to be a big play.
Yeah, I mean, that could have been a case where Francisco might not even be able to pay for his pact. Thankfully, he had the gemstone mine.
Thalia West back into play off of the Crucible of Worlds. Great Creator going downstairs again. And this going to be the Pithing Needle on Karn for both sides? No,
I think he's looking for.
He's spelled something. Oh, Inventor's Fair. He wants to stop the incremental life gain and the ability for Susurrus to go looking.
I have to say, my co-host watching right now, Zach, is loving this game. Just this prison-y back and forth. These are the kind of decks that, not these decks exactly, but he's been playing Red Prison a lot, and he's been loving it. The thought process you have to put into, what you dig out of your sideboard, what you're putting in there in the first place, how you're going to execute your win.
So Zach has a sadistic streak, is what you're telling us. This is.
You know what? I think he just likes being thoughtful in his Magic gameplay.
Magic's version of Sudoku puzzles sometimes when you put these decks together, because the pieces aren't linear. And I think that's one of the powers that these decks bring to bear, is that you can go for so many different angles. We talked a little bit earlier this evening during the MSL about decks that have that sort of spiritual descent from twin decks of the past. And this deck from Francisco, his version of Titan certainly feels that way, because he's got the ability to be a control deck, it feels like, but he also has those speed kills that Amulet Titan can bring to bear. So we'll see where Francisco elects to go here.
Yeah.
Francisco eyeing up the Karn on the stack. No one has decided to try and Pithing Needle Karn yet. Each player, that tells me, feels like they have the advantage with Karn being active. And watching these two decks operate on different lines of attack with the same key card to keep that fundamentally powerful advantage going, thinking that they have the leg up, is very interesting, because these guys are both absolute masters at their deck. Susurrus with the Whir Prison deck, and of course Francisco with the Amulet deck.
So let's see. So a double Amulet of Vigor provides even more mana ability for Francisco here. I don't know what he's exactly needing to do, so he's going to make a bunch of mana, that's for sure. So what's he choosing to get? Oh, there we go.
We're going to see the lattice come down.
Lattice lock.
Francisco has the hands in the air.
Yep.
And
That's all it takes.
The win. Francisco pops the jersey into the camera for the win here in game 1 of the Modern Streamers League. This is round 3. Team Ice has already won rounds 1 and 2 here this evening. Sean, along with Shane from the Dive Down. Who's been the best guest that you guys have had on the Dive Down? I was looking through the past episodes tonight before we came on for Modern Streamers League. You guys have had Riley Knight, one of the key pieces for Wizards presentations for Mythic Championships, formerly
Mythic Championships.
He was involved. Yeah, he was involved under both headings there. He's a name that certainly jumps off the page at you. Who's been, in your estimation, a guest that you were really looking forward to, or who stood out?
Well, I have to, I've appreciated, we've had a couple big guests. I've loved having Ross Miriam agreed to come on our pod really early. I think it was like episode 14. He didn't really know who we were. We knew, of course, who he was, and he just did an amazing job explaining kind of his thoughts about the format and his thoughts about Izzet Phoenix, which was a deck that was super powerful in his hands at the time. We honestly had to cut almost half of his interview. He just had so much to say and said it so eloquently, and just really being in the same room as him was really awesome. And then, of course, Riley agreeing to come on. He is just such a charismatic guy. He's so fun to talk to. His wit is so fast, and his brain is so attuned to Magic. It was great to have both those gentlemen on the podcast and speak to them. And, we'll definitely be trying to have some guests in the future, some host exchanges with some other podcasts. And, guests are definitely one of the big benefits of being a part of the podcast community, is being able to speak to people who know more than you do and try to learn from them.
Modern for the Casual Spike, the Dive Down. Dave, Stanislav, Zach, and of course Shane from the Dive Down, who's with us tonight here on the Modern Streamers League. Game 2 getting set to go off. Susurrus on Karn Whir Prison on the play. Welding Jar as he's starting to empty his hand now, and we'll see an active Mox Opal on turn 1. That's going to lead right into the Spyglass.
Mamma mia.
Looks rocked back in his chair right now.
What's it going to name? Yep, Karn the Great Creator. Smart choice.
Turn 1 Amulet, or turn 1 instead he'll go with the creature drop. He had really everything open there. He could have gone Ancient Stirrings, could have gone Amulet. Instead elects to start developing his board. Now where does Susurrus go on turn 2 after that play?
You know what I have to admit too? I also forgot about, I think our very first guest the week before Ross was Gall Schlesinger, who's a part of this Modern Streamers competition.
Yeah, Yamakiller. We're going to see later this evening as he's going to be taken on with his Hardened Scales list that I really love, Dredge. That's going to be an out-and-out race coming up in our next couple of rounds.
Man, I'm super hyped for that one, I have to admit. I've played a decent amount of Dredge, and I'm hyped to see Yamakiller Gall play one of his favorite decks in Hardened Scales. Okay, so we've got Engineered Explosive named with the other Sorceress Spyglass, really preventing Francisco from using one of his primary out cards to sweep some of these hate cards off the battlefield.
Susurrus's prison feels much stronger here in game 2 than it ever did in game 1. If he can put together something like an ensnaring bridge now, I have to think the outs are slowly being squeezed off from Francisco. But Francisco in this explosive Titan deck, still with plenty of things that it can bring to bear. He's got the Amulet. So at any point, you could just see that explosion that Titan's known for.
So let's see. Right now, Francisco doesn't have the ability to do too much. I think that he's got to hope to get a good hit that he's, not an amazing Ancient Stirrings hit there. But even if he hit the Engineered Explosives, he doesn't really have the ability to do much with it.
Just a handful of lands right now for Francisco, and none of them notably Tolaria West, where he can cycle it for a much-needed pickup out of his deck. Instead, he's watching his Susurrus just slowly tightens the thumb presses on him.
Yeah, and even if he peels a Pact here, or is able to transmute into a Pact, he's not able to use that with Chalice on 0. And even if he wants to transmute into an X spell, he can't sweep anything with EE, as I mentioned before. So, man, inactivate abilities of artifacts can't be activated on the other side of the battlefield. It's not going to hurt him. So he can peel up the Walking Ballista as kind of his current mode of primarily getting some damage in.
Forcing the use of the Blast Zone here, or will Susurrus let it go? Looks like he'll let it go, and he'll pick up the extra land for it. Now the Pact.
Chalice, see Chalice stopping the Pact, as Francisco is pointing out to us.
And it has to feel, if you're Francisco, a little bit like you're going to need 2 or 3 answers on the other side, because that welding jar is just sitting there telling you your first effort's not going to be good enough if you're trying to take out an important piece. Whir.
All right, we start to see a Whir. Francisco with the thumbs down, not happy to see that powerful spell get cast.
And now this is where the prison deck puts together what it feels like is just the clamps, and we're going to see Cloister. That's going to give Susurrus the ability to draw extra cards on his turn while exiling his hand during his opponent's turn. But this is, except for Whir, is largely a sorcery speed deck for the prison deck. So that's a quote-unquote disadvantage, Shane, and you're really turning it into a big advantage with the extra cards.
Yeah, I mean, of course, one of the more powerful combos is Ballad Cloister combined with Ensnaring Bridge, because it just makes your hand 0 even when it's really not. Francisco's so hyped for this Force of Vigor. What a peel.
This is going to be worth a chair dance from Francisco.
I believe that's a single card in his sideboard he just got up there.
So what does he go after? I think
that's a good question.
Has to be on that short list. And yeah, you have it now, Francisco, but I think the question is, where are you pointing it? You would look at Bottled Cloister as the card advantage. He's already looking at the Chalice so that he could use his Summoner's Pact. Then you've still got both spyglasses.
So with a double amulet, and I do not see an ensnaring bridge on the other side of the battlefield. I really don't think I'm missing anything. So I think that Francisco could potentially get a quick win here by, pacting for a Titan with a double amulet and, being able to peel up a ton of mana. Or maybe he's just going to go for the throat.
So Cloister and Spyglass on Karn were the picks. And right now he's looking for the lattice.
Yeah, look at me trying to find the sneaky way to win when you have such a hammer to just smash with Microsoft Lattice.
In a much quicker win in this match than I would have ever thought that we would see between his build of this Karn Amulet deck and the Whir Prison deck. Gets it 2-0. Congratulations to Francisco. Francisco now adds another name for Team Ice that gets to 2 wins here in week 2. That has been the only 2-0 so far here this evening on day 2 of week 2 of the Modern Streamers League. So Team Ice absolutely dominating here this evening so far, Shane. Thanks for hanging out with us so far. And I think even though you're under some time restrictions of your own, we're not going to put you in the extra turns if we go one more match together tonight. You ready?
Oh, I'm good for one more.
All right, we'll look forward to round 4 on the Modern Streamers League. That comes up next. The Modern Streamers League brought to you by both Card Titan and by Card Hoarder. Anywhere you want to play, your dreams for your cardboard or digital object can be answered by our sponsors who help make the Modern Streamers League possible, Card Titan or Card Hoarder. You can find out about your favorite teams and players' decks. They're listed below on the Twitch page. It is all open knowledge here in the Modern Streamers League since week 1 began just a week ago. Team Ice, they've renewed their ice cold controlling streak that they found after week 1. They were up at the end of week 1, 6-4, down after we looked at the results from Monday night, 8-7, but it's been a 3-match win streak, and now Team Ice firmly in control again, up 10-8. Team Ice has to feel good. They know they can be no worse than tied after week 2, and they're going to look to take a commanding edge on Team Fire as we continue next on the Modern Streamers League.
Welcome back to the Forecast of Doom. It is chilly here. Team Ice is just absolutely tearing it up, and I've got my ice cream, I've got my ice water, and I am absolutely loving this Team Ice domination right now. The match we have up next is Eldrazi, Tron, and Burn Zoo, Noblemurloc, and Vizquiz, which is the nickname we are giving the deck there. So this is a really interesting matchup. Burn is actually a very fast deck against Eldrazi Tron, so the card that matters most here is a Chalice. If Eldrazi Tron can get a Chalice on one early, that shuts off a huge chunk of what Burn Zoo is trying to do. Other key cards are Thought Not Seer, which is just a big 4/4 body that can get in the way and eat a removal spell, and Blast Zone, which comes in and can wipe out most of Naya Burns' threats. Now, interesting cards that get around Chalice would be things like Rift and Skewer, which can get around a Chalice on one and still chip in to get incremental damage. I predict this match to go in a style where Burn Zoo is going to want to get as much damage on the table as fast as possible and then chip away at a low life total with those Skewers and Rifts. If, however, Eldrazi Tron lands an early Chalice and Noblemurloc has a hand with too many 1-drops or too many creatures and just can't drop the hand fast enough, this can easily go in Eldrazi Tron's favor. So that is pretty much how the most important card from what I see is that Chalice. So the Destructive Revelry and the Goyf that Noblemurloc has in the sideboard could be coming in just to kind of get around that, with a Basilisk Collar maybe being a way that Eldrazi Tron tries to gain some life. That is my prediction. Whew, it is cold. Let's see if Burn keeps things cold here. Let's see how it all plays out.
This is Magic the way I love to see it. Zoo, Burn, Noblemurloc looking for the win for Team Ice. Sean Seacrease for the Modern Streamers League, along with our guest Shane from the Dive Down. Shane, Noblemurloc, Zoo, Burn, Vizquiz 87 on Eldrazi Tron. If this game gets to turn 5 and Vizquiz's life total is above 6, it's going to be hard for Zoo Burn to put this away.
For sure. I mean, Noblemurloc is loving this opening hand, I think, because they're able to get onto the battlefield pretty quickly with a number of powerful creatures. I think, like we said in the breakdown there, is they're really relying on Chalice on the side. Vizquiz wants to get a Chalice. A Chalice on one shuts down so many cards. It's such powerful virtual card advantage by just taking out all of the 1-drops in Noblemurloc's deck. They really likely are going to be hard mulling to it because they do know the deck they're playing against.
Noblemurloc looks like he's getting ready to go into the octagon. You see him on camera there. He's getting loose with the shoulders. He's got some bounce. He's ready to go. It takes a fighter to play a Zoo Burn deck. And we saw a week ago, Zoo Burn just was a little bit on the slow side against Hardened Scales from Yamakiller, who we'll see in our final match of the second night of the second week of the Modern Streamers League coming up next. Right now, Zoo Burn, though, getting to play. It's 1-drop on the play. Get in for 2 early. Goblin Guide, will there be a downside? We'll see the reveal. It's going to be Seer. So no downside to that Goblin Guide, and starting off with a quick, repeatable shock for the Zoo Burn deck.
Yeah, so being on the play is big game here for Noblemurloc. They're able to get the hasty Goblin Guide down and then turn to stick the Wild Nacatl as well. So at least having repeatable sources of damage on the board, even in the face of a Chalice on one.
So how aware is Noblemurloc right now that next turn he could be looking at Chalice on one? I think he's got to be very aware, and so it's going to be interesting which 1-drop spells he thinks are most important. He's going to split the difference, go for a Lava Spike with the Swift Spear. That Lava Spike is for 3, and then 4 more on the ground already. Vizquiz 87 sitting at 11. What's he going to do with this turn 2?
So an important thing, too, is that, I think Noblemurloc, of course, knows this, is that even with Chalice on one there, when Noblemurloc casts his 1-drop spells, it still triggers Prowess.
And this is going to be a huge game as he picks up the Eidolon right on schedule.
Yeah, so, I mean, he can have his cake and eat it too here, where, of course it's stopping the power of a lava spike to the dome on VizQuiz's side, but he's continuing, like I said, to trigger that prowess from the Monastery Mentor. He's got the repeatable damage of the Goblin Guide, the Monastery Swift Spear, and now the Eidolon of the Great Rebel. So couldn't ask for a better start, even in the face of the Chalice on the Void on one there. But that's the power of being on the play with the burn deck.
And right now, thinking, okay, the Eldrazi deck, this isn't your typical big Eldrazi deck. This is Eldrazi Tron. So or your typical big Tron deck, it's Eldrazi Tron. So it's going to have some spells that are 3 or less that it's very interested in getting out. Is it willing to trade that for the damage from the Eidolon? Well, now we're going to see the map.
Yeah, let's see what land they pick up here. Yeah, Eldrazi Temple. They're hoping to be able to probably get that Thought-Knot Seer we saw earlier down on the next turn. They might have something they can cast this turn. Nope, they play the tower. And next turn they can untap, play that temple, either do a Reality Smasher or that Thought-Knot Seer we saw earlier come off the Goblin Guide trigger.
Shane, I don't think it's going to be enough.
I don't think so. This game's over.
That's going to be countered by the Chalice, but it's going to still pump the Swift Spear.
Exactly.
And the same thing could be done with the Wild Nacatl. It could, they wouldn't pump the Swift Spear, excuse me.
Yeah, but I think that, even if they get a blocker down, even if they get a single powerful creature on the other side, this game's over. I mean, unless they untap and...
Excuse me.
Yeah, I think that this would be very challenging for the Eldrazi Tron player to win from this point. They don't have a sweeper that they could say untap with. Like, they can't play Ugin, even if they made Tron with the wastes there, they can't sweep away the board. So,
and even if you spend the turn playing Thought-Knot Seer, you still have Noblemurloc wide enough to end this game by going around, and that's going to be the case. He can grab the Searing Blaze. But unless there's another, he can't even use a 1-drop because he would take the 2 damage from the Eidolon. This game's just over.
Yeah, that just gives him the opening to cast a Searing Blaze with the landfall trigger. Noblemurloc could not be happier to win this game. Like I mentioned earlier, I think it's the power of being on the play. I also think playing the Swift Spear, even though in this game it didn't add up to more damage than the Wild Nacatl was, I think, or would have been. I think that it was a very heads-up play to play to your outs, to say, I can't cast these 1-drop spells anymore. I can't resolve these 1-drop spells anymore, but I can cast them, and they are going to trigger my prowess creature.
Be interesting to see how much Noblemurloc decides he wants to attack those possible artifacts. Because if Red decides that it wants to pack answers for that, not only do they answer it, but they usually deal some damage in the process, which is sort of a double whammy for opponents. So this is going to be interesting. Game 2, Noblemurloc's going to be on the draw, but he knows if this goes to game 3, he gets another game on the play. So in these situations, when I play aggressive decks, I always think, why not just sell out? Don't worry about being reactionary. You get game 3 no matter what. I don't mean get it as in win, but there will be a game 3.
Exactly.
And you're going to be on the play. So that's why I've always thought that I'm less inclined, because I played Zoo for a long time. I was always less inclined to try and bring in answers in this situation because I know that I get to be on the play in game 3. Tarka's Command, along with Skewer the Critics, the Rift Bolt, and 4 lands. I wonder if Noblemurloc's going to be happy with this. This is a slower hand and one that's land heavy.
Yeah, it's certainly slower. I think that Noblemurloc is going to want to have a source of repeatable creature damage on the battlefield. Because a number of these spells aren't doing much. Oh boy, and with a Leyline of Sanctity on turn 0.
That turns off the Rift Bolt to the face, along with the Skewer the Critics to the face and the keep by Noblemurloc. You have to be wondering if he's regretting that, because you're looking for creatures and repeatable forms of damage, and you see already the hand going over the forehead for Noblemurloc. His posture, Shane, is just about the opposite of what we saw from the beginning of this match right now.
Yeah, I mean, like you were saying during the sideboarding, is that Noblemurloc not necessarily going to punt away this game or throw away this game, but he's really hoping, in my opinion, of course, he's really hoping to come back on game 3, have the play, and have a super aggressive hand that can potentially win, like we saw through a Chalice on turn 2.
Right. And nobody's making an intimation that a player's looking to throw a game or doesn't care, but you've got that sort of safety net of game 3
Exactly.
going to be on the play. That doesn't mean you're always going to win, but it's in the back of your mind, okay, I have this other opportunity where I'm at the most favored in this matchup if this doesn't go my way. And pre-game Leyline of Sanctity, turn 2 on the play, Chalice, and this has to feel terrible for Noblemurloc.
I mean, thankfully, Noblemurloc does have spells he can, hard cast for 3, like Skewer the Cuix and Rift Bolt, and the Atarka's Command with 2. But there he does pull up the D-Rev. That's a nice pull. He can take out the Leyline of Sanctity here in the face of the Chalice on 1 and start getting to work with the rest of his cards.
How big of an add to this deck was the white-red, I'll say, Horizon Canopy style deck that we saw from Modern Horizons? It seems like these decks that don't have ingrained card advantage, card drawing, are the ones that really were thirsting for that. And we see the red-white land in Noblemurloc's hand. And right now we're going to see the Smasher go up against his face.
Oh, man, really putting a clock down against Noblemurloc. We know the power of Reality Smasher. But to answer your question, I think that, those lands are super powerful for a strategy like Burn. It gives it a line of card draw it never had before, really. And I think that they're going to be a staple to, decks like Mono Red Prowess and Naya Burn for some time. So let's see what Noblemurloc's able to do in the face of this 5/5 Trampler now that Leyline of the Void is off the battlefield.
Searing Blade.
Leyline of Sanctity, rather.
With landfall. So he'll be able to take away the Smasher. Now, if there's no follow-up Smasher, this can buy him a couple of turns. If there is, he 3-for-1'd himself, or 4-for-1'd himself to take care of a Smasher, and then may have to look at another Smasher next turn.
I can't imagine a worse feeling than spending your cards like this if you're Noblemurloc. But he just has to, because the clock is just too fast with that Smasher.
Noblemurloc right now down to Rift Bolt and Atarka's Command in his hand, while his opponent going to be dropping undercosted Eldrazi. And creature for creature, right now we know Visquis's are going to be bigger on average, and that's also a tough place to be if you're a zoo that wants to get out fast. And Blast Zone comes down. All of the creatures that can be played quickly for Noblemurloc are 1-drops, Chalice on 2, and I think this one's over.
Yeah, I mean, Noblemurloc can try to stick it out, can try to, hard cast 3-drops like Rift Bolt. In a tournament setting, you might want to do this just, you can cross your fingers and hope, but by and large, this game is probably heavily in Visquis's favor.
Well, and you think about it, at the end of game 1, we saw the Thought-Knot Seer, and you might think, okay, you're going to do that for information. Well, in this situation, the decks are 100% known. You can actually pull them up right now just underneath us on our Twitch channel and see all 20 of our Modern Streamers participants' decks, sideboard included, and that is known information for the players as well. So I think fighting to the end, giving the good fight in these situations, I think it's just ingrained in people who are streamers. They're there to stream, to have fun with it. And we see Visquis87 picking up game 2. So we'll go to game 3, and this puts Zuburn back on the play, Shane.
Yeah, of course, right as you say that is when Noblemurloc, he does take the concession, knowing that he doesn't really have pretty much any way to win that game. So I'm curious, how Noblemurloc is going to choose to sideboard on the play in game 3. It looks like in game 2 he did take out as a Wild Nacatls. He's bringing in the long game cards that can't be countered. It looks like Exquisite Firecraft for the 4 damage, even through a Chalice on 3, if that would be the case.
Both of these players looking for their first win in the Modern Streamers League. Both went into the loss column last week, and Team Ice right now. A part of me wants to see the next level celebration from TheSaintDoom. Part of me doesn't want to see him just toe the line one more time. So I don't know who to root for in this situation. We're watching the perspective of Team Ice, Noblemurloc, and he's got his head in his hands wondering if he can keep this. He's got the Swift Spear. He's got a 1-drop to go with it. He can take care of the ley line.
Yeah. I think he almost has to, because if there's a ley line on 0, he's got to have an answer. So I think that this hand is going to do enough. I think that he's going to have to hope to draw pretty well. If one of these lands was one of those New Horizon lands, like you mentioned, it's a no-brainer. But right now, he's going to have to cast a Swift Spear, untap, cast some Lava Spike, maybe a Skewer the Critics. After the he can Dome for the Lava Spike. He can Skewer the Critics, attack in again. I think that he has a pretty aggressive start. He's going to hope to just top deck well into some more burn.
And notable that Skewer the Critics can be played for 1 mana through a Chalice on 1 because the casting cost never changes on the card. You're just paying alternate cost. So that's one of the backdoor ways that he has, even after an early Chalice. And now we see Basilisk Collar. Death Touch, yes, but lifelink. And if you put that on 4 or a 5/5 Eldrazi, that might be too much.
Well, I mean, thankfully, he can derev that card. So, unless he's facing down significant hate in the form of a Chalice, he might have to take that Basilisk Collar off the battlefield with that Destructive Revelry, which also then unlocks the Skewer the Critics before attacks.
Now the Chalice on 2.
Oh, this is too bad. Oh, he can derev it, yeah.
Go. Chalice is on 1, not 2. So he can still derev the Chalice.
Exactly.
Play. Now, it's going to take care of the Bolt. It's only going to be usable as a pump spell for the Swift Spear. But is he going to aim the derev at the Chalice and then try to get... This is the most aggressive line if he goes for this.
I think this is what he has to do here, because so many of his spells do cost 1. He has to not have so much of his deck locked up. He's hyped for this. He's getting the a ton of damage in, and all he has to do is be able to cast that Skewer the Critics.
I don't think that there's a way Visquez could play Smasher and equip the Basilisk Collar on this turn.
No, this is great. I think the aggressive line was the correct one to take. I think that's the... Ooh.
Brutal. It takes the win out of his hand. Now he's looking at the top deck.
Let's see what he draws.
Celebration if it's a big... Oh, and Murloc head in hands. He knows now he cannot answer the Basilisk Collar. It's going to get equipped.
Oh no!
See the Thought-Knot Seer come in.
Oh, this is a sad sight to see.
He was celebrating, and he knew he had it. The only thing that could take it away was the Thought-Knot Seer. Visquez has the Thought-Knot Seer. Even then, a chance for Noblemurloc to peel one time and answer, and his deck gave him a mountain. And right now, it's not over, because you could string together a couple of cards with the escalating damage that Swift Spear provides. But once that Basilisk Collar goes on an Eldrazi and it turns sideways, that's going to be hard for Zuburn to beat.
It certainly will be. It's going to take a string of very good luck, and man.
And I believe Visquez has Tron as well. Does he not, or am I seeing 2 mines?
No, that's a tower, power plant, and mine. So Tron is active.
Now the Thought-Knot Seer going to come in, gain 4. I don't think you can afford to stay back and protect because a Lightning Bolt ends it. So yeah, Thought-Knot Seer right into the red zone.
So that puts Visquez at 6. If Noblemurloc had been sandbagging a burn spell, there was an opportunity for him to win. But of course, he now knows that that's not the case.
And Noblemurloc, this has to feel like the bottom has dropped out on a roller coaster ride in your stomach, because he took the most aggressive line. He was 1 turn away from getting paid with a win for taking that line. The Thought-Knot Seer takes away the burn. His deck gives him a mountain off the top. And now I don't think there's any one card he can draw to combo with the Swift Spear to deal 6 in 1 turn.
Yeah, I mean, there was an argument to be said, argument to be had for taking out the Basilisk Collar, because that card, does lose him the game more or less. But, he was so close. I think the only thing that could have won that game was Thought-Knot Seer, taking away his Skewer the Critics.
Followed up by a blank draw, because he could have seen Lightning Bolt off the top and won
Exactly.
anyway. Now enough mana with Tron to move the Basilisk Collar over on defense. And I think that's going to be the nail in the coffin.
That's brutal on the from Noblemurloc's point of view, of course. Of course, Vizquiz is hyped. His deck's doing what it's supposed to do. Oh, just running land draws. Noblemurloc not happy to see that. And of course, it's none of those aforementioned cycling lands we talked about.
No, the power of those new additions from Modern Horizons has been evident in the first week and a half here on the Modern Streamers League. And now Vizquiz feeling comfortable enough that he's going to be able to get in. Will he turn up the heat and go for the attack for 8 here and go up to 10? I guess you're pretty safe there. I'm looking at a 3-card combo that could deal 10 for Zuburn, and I can't put one together in my mind, even with the ramp from Swift Spear.
No, Vizquiz is fully in control of this game right now, and they know it. Just the lifelink just draws you so far away from any ability that Noblemurloc has to generate lethal.
If you didn't hear us talk about it in week 1, Noblemurloc got the family involved in this. From reports, he got the kids of his involved, and they helped him pick the deck that he's playing here on the first half of the Modern Streamers League. Zuburn, a perennial favorite. It was just about to lock it down, and then everything fell apart for him, and he just hasn't been able to recover from running lands off of the first Thought-Knot Seer, taking the winning burn spell out of his hand, and now he watches as Karn, the Great Creator, ticks up. And the look on his face says it all.
Yeah, this game will be out of his hands very quickly. I mean, it doesn't even have to get a lock piece here. It doesn't even have to get something like an ensnaring bridge or anything like that. They can just peel up the walking ballista, start pinging things down, and just completely lock the game up.
Our last match still to come this evening. We'll be joined by Guano Maestro. It's going to be Yamakiller on Hardened Scales and Sodekmtg on Dredge. That also promises to be most likely game 1, a lightning speed game, as both combo decks are going to try to do their thing. It'll be interesting to see who has what interaction after sideboard. We'll get that breakdown from the Forecast of Doom coming up before round 5. Now the ultimate insult, the Basilisk Collar on the ballista, and just off the top.
Oh, too little, too late.
Noblemurloc was on the precipice of a win, and Eldrazi just coming and taking it away from him.
Concedes the game.
That's
that was
for Noblemurloc.
You couldn't have asked for a closer match between those two decks. Both decks executed the way that they wanted to. Unfortunately, Noblemurloc, unfortunately for him, Noblemurloc wasn't able to dig out the win there.
The podcast is The Dive Down. It's modern for the casual spike. His castmates, Dave, Stanislav, and Zach, thank you to those 3 for being willing to lend us Shane here this evening for the Modern Streamers League. Shane, thanks for hanging out so much. We appreciate it. Have you seen a sort of play of the night or a game of the night that you're going to take with you from this evening on the Modern Streamers League?
You know what? I think the fact that I don't think that SaintDoom nor myself thought that he was going to pull out that win. To see him do that was really impressive. Saw the power of Teferi Time Raveler. Saw the power of Karn the Great Creator. I think the card of the night has to be Karn the Great Creator. It has done so much work in so many of these games. You can see why some people are a little bit grumpy about it, but some of us who love playing with powerful artifacts are loving it. So I think that's the card of the night for me, and the game of the night is one of our co-hosts, SaintDoom. So congratulations to him for winning my award.
We saw Plague Engineer as the card of the night on Monday night. It's certainly been Karn the Great Creator here this evening. Get it anywhere you get your podcasts. The Dive Down. Zach, Stan, and of course Dave teaming up with Shane, who's been our guest all night long. Shane, thanks so much for hanging out with us. It's been an absolute blast. Look forward to the next episode of the Dive Down.
Yeah, it comes out every Friday. All you casual spikes and you full-time spikes, feel free to grab it. We'll be happy to have all listeners. And so we have a lot of fun every week. So thanks for having me. It's been an absolute blast, a great opportunity, and look forward to watching you all in future weeks.
Coming up, Guano Maestro rejoins us. We get the final forecast of doom of the evening. Team Ice's roll has been stopped. Can Team Fire win the last one and make it a level 10 on the scoreboard heading into week 3? We'll find out next on the Modern Streamers League.
Welcome back to the Forecast of Doom. Man, it just got a lot warmer in here after Team Fire took that match. So, sweatshirt had to go. Plus, it's also July. So this is a very, very interesting match to me because I feel like this is really a tale of pre and post sideboard. Pre-sideboard, this game is all about Inkmoth Nexus from Yamakiller's side, or just a fast race. So Inkmoth Nexus gets around Conflagrate, gets around a lot of the removal spells that Sodek on Dredge has main board, and it also enables some really powerful fast wins that get through Creeping Chill. Because Creeping Chill can race an aggro draw, but it cannot race a poison draw. Post board, however, is, like I said before, is when things get really, really interesting. On Yamakiller's side, he has some Grafdigger's Cage, which can really slow down Dredge. But I don't know if we saw this. I think we saw this last week. Sodek is running so many artifact hate cards in his sideboard to go over them. 1 Decay, 2 Ancient Grudge, 4 Nature's Claim, and a Shenanigans. All of those cards can deal with Cage. All of those cards can deal with pretty much every single creature that Yamakiller is running, and a lot of the actual permanents, including some of them like Nature's Claim, can hit Hardened Scales. Now, I really, really feel, like I said before, that this match is going to be about Inkmoth Nexus, and I feel like Yamakiller and Hardened Scales is favored pre-board, but after Sodek brings in all of those hate cards I just went over right there, I don't know. I really feel like post-board Dredge is favored here. Let's see how this all plays out.
It's our final match of night 2, week 2 of the Modern Streamers League. Yamakiller on Hardened Scales will be the opposition for Sodekmtg on Dredge. We're rejoined by Guano Maestro.
Hello.
Guano, it's been 4 absolutely fantastic matches already.
Yeah.
Who you got here in round 5 tonight?
I was playing Yamakiller's deck on Tuesday, and man, the math, it is a math-laden deck, and lordy loo, it is difficult. But when you get it right, I mean, there's turn 3 kills, turn 2 there's so many amazing lines that you can just take over the game, and there's nothing that Dredge could do about it.
Sodek off to a hot start. Even after the mulligan, he'll have an opportunity to Faithless Looting, and he'll put Stinkweed Imp in the graveyard. So we know he's got a turn 2 Dredge already set to go. Extra land, and he's got the Blast Zone. We'll see if that's any good for him here in the matchup against Hardened Scales. He might feel like it could be a little bit slow, but we'll have to see how that absolutely ends up playing out. Yamakiller, you're looking at the creature he adds to the board, but the most important thing might be the Inkmoth that came in on turn 1.
Yeah, there's a lot of different lines you could take right now, depending on, obviously we can't see his hand, but there are, this could be a turn 3 kill right here if he lines it up right.
And we're watching Team Ice, Sodekmtg's view from his Dredge deck. That is his graveyard that's pulled up above his hand on the screen. He'll be doing that throughout the match for us so we can get a really good look at his graveyard on this Dredge deck.
Looks like a Conflagrate he's looking at. Little 1 damage each. Sweep the board. Sweep the leg, Johnny. Sweep the leg.
We'll see if that's going to be enough, or if that you just cast Hardened Scales into the role of Danielson. So we'll see if he's able to come back here in the all-digital Valley MTG tournament. Sodek patiently waiting. Hanger Backwalker. This can buy a lot of time for the Hardened Scales deck, but we'll see where Sodek wants to go here, Guano.
He was good looking through his graveyard there, looking to see what his next play is going to be. There, he got his Stinkweed Imp back there. Nothing, didn't look like he got him. Maybe got a Bloodghast in. Looking to bring that out. What else? You have any draw card? No. He can do a Faithless Looting. Yep, there we go. With the Golgari Thug.
Thug will look like replace the first draw.
Mm-hmm.
And now he can replace it with Life from the Loam if he chooses to. And I have to imagine he will.
And he dumps him right back in there, too, with the discard.
Well, and you see he gets the Narcomoebas for free. He gets the Creeping Chill. And that's the power of being able to not just leverage the draw step for Dredge, but also to replace your draw effects with Dredge effects. We saw there that the Faithless Looting flashback was the equivalent of essentially drawing, 8 cards at that point?
And the life, too. I mean, he got 2. I believe he got, how many you got? 2 Creeping Chills so far.
That's important on the life tracker, but we heard Doom talk about it. The one thing that doesn't answer are the quick, clean kills from poison. And with 2 Ink Moth Nexuses on the board, that's certainly something that has to be on Sodek's mind right now. And the other notable weakness for Dredge decks, they don't defend the air very well.
Correct. They got the Narcomoebas, but 1/1s, and to get those last couple points of damage, they're mainly there just to get the guys out of the graveyard, your prized amalgams, all that stuff, get it in motion. But I mean, I've lost the Narcomoebas before too, where it's just 2 a turn, ping, ping, ping all day.
Faithless Looting, again, a couple of Dredgers able to come back for Sodek. We say he doesn't defend the air very well, but he does have the Narcomoebas, and that's going to buy some time unless it can be shot down by Yamakiller with the Walking Ballista. But we don't even know what Yamakiller's real texture looks like on his hand, because he certainly hasn't had the explosive starts that we saw in his week 1 win when he took down Zuburn.
And the Creeping Chill is going to give all those blood gas haste right now, so...
This is looking good for Sodek and Team Ice. Team Fire needs this to end the week level in matches at 10-10. Team Ice with the win would be up 11-9 heading into week 3. Singleton on our Spice Week here on the first half of the Modern Streamers League coming up next week. And then 2 weeks, same decks coming up in weeks 4 and 5. So here's an all-out attack from Sodek for everything that can turn sideways this turn.
Inkmoth Nexus coming out of nowhere with some lovin's.
Animating. I think he knows he needs the blockers right now. That is lethal power in the red zone for Sodek. Still going to take 4 unless he decides to shoot down something with the Walking Ballista. He could declare the block, shoot down the other, and it looks like that's what's going to happen.
Use the Hangerback or use the Inkmoth Nexus mana to up the 1/1 counters on the Hangerback Walker to get 2 flyers there.
But the bad news right now for Yamakiller is if he has to stay on the defensive, he's going to start losing a lot of his board next turn and eventually work himself down into a spot of helplessness against the wider board of Dredge. So Yamakiller is going to have to figure out something quickly, and Dredge is still on the front foot.
Agreed. And that Forgotten Cave, man, that is just a Dredge enabler with the Life from the Loam. That has definitely changed the way Dredge plays. Oh,
and that's going to be enough.
The scoop phase. I played with VizQuiz on one of my streams, and he taught me about the scoop phase. That's, I think, my favorite phase when I am playing an opponent and they immediately move to the scoop. I was actually playing 8-Rack today, and I had 2 people disconnect like immediately. So that's the way I like to play.
That might be 8-Rack's most powerful mode.
The scoop phase.
Well, when your opponent disconnects, that might be.
Well, it happened twice, so I don't think it was on accident. It was like back-to-back games. I was playing Tron, and I think I was playing. I don't know. Is VizQuiz still on here? No. Who was with me when that happened? It was. I don't even know where it was. It was so many people on. I get so much advice. That's a huge part of what I do. Is I always ask people to help me. What's he gonna do with sideboard here?
When it comes to Dredge, I am perplexed. I'm sure we'll have a Dredge expert on in the future, but I just don't think that it's worth getting much in the line of removal because we see how powerful the Dredge deck is. Maybe you want a few more pieces with knowing that Hardened Scales is going to be on the play here, but you can't dilute the Dredge engine. That's one of the issues with these engine decks is how much can you take away from it in order to pick up pieces from your sideboard that aren't necessarily part of that core power structure of the deck.
And Capolo, I was in leagues, just so you know. Capolo's giving me a hard time right now.
Capolo was a lot of fun today. Mentioned it earlier. We recorded his extra turns. We'll have that for you coming up next week here on the Modern Streamers League. Turn 1 Hardened Scales. This can lead to some wacky shenanigans on the Hardened Scale side of the deck. And if you've never seen Guano Maestro stream, Guano, when are you on? Because it is a tour de force of top-level Modern.
Oh, what kind words. I'm on Monday through Friday from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I think it's the opposite actually of what you said, but I do appreciate the pump up. I appreciate that.
Sodek looking at turn 2 here.
Oh, this cathartic reunions, man. I hate seeing one of these land. It is, you're in, just did the order of it where you discard first so they can get rid of all of their dredgers and then draw 3 cards. It's just exactly what a dredge deck needs. This is the new tech right here, the Scrapyard Recombiner here for Yamakiller.
It is. And just to follow up your last thought about Dredge, Sodek really didn't have a very good hand to pitch to that cathartic reunion. He picked up his Dredger after the fact on the draw.
Mm-hmm.
Now the pickup Ancient Grudge, but 2 welding jars on the table for Hardened Scales and Yamakiller right now. He'd have to use both if Sodek would to go for both halves of that Ancient Grudge.
Right.
Faithless Looting still there as well. No Dredger, though, in the graveyard.
That's going to be rough. Faithless Looting, though, will probably give him a little something there with the dumping the stinkweed. And
where does he want to go now?
Man.
Oh, that's an easy stinkweed and prized amalgam, I would think. Or unless he wants to get the Bloodghast active. But with Yamakiller at 24, Bloodghast not going to block. I would think there wouldn't be much angle to it now, but Sodek elects to go with it. He'll keep the prized amalgam in hand. Get the Bloodghast back. So what's the Scrapyard Recombiner bringing to the deck? You just mentioned that, Guano.
Well, it gives it the ability to search, so you can go find any construct or artifact, right? Artifact or you sacrifice an artifact, and you can go look for a construct card, and that's pretty much everything that he's got in his deck, except for all the creatures anyway. Going to get, there we go, our Walking Ballista. You could get that, and then you've got your modular that's going to back and forth, pumping up your ballista, taking things out. And it's also with that modular. I mean, if obviously he doesn't have an Inkmoth Nexus right now, but it works, the exact same as any other modular card. So you can pump up that, and you can sacrifice yourself to it too. So he can sacrifice himself, move those tokens over to his Inkmoth Nexus, and you win that way.
And if you're wondering, well, where's the bonus shot that Walking Ballista may be able to take? There was a Nature's Claim earlier on Hardened Scales from Sodek. So the extra not coming into play for the creatures that are coming into play under Hardened Scales side of the board. That Walking Ballista, probably the biggest one that benefits from the Hardened Scales text box. You can pay 2, ping something, and still have your Walking Ballista on board to use in the future.
That's clutch right there. You got the Narcomoeba and the Amalgam in the graveyard there.
So this game, too, taking longer for both of these combo decks to really put viable board presence together, I'd have to say, as both had lackluster beginnings. We saw it looked good right out of the gate for Yamakiller when he started on the Hardened Scales. That didn't last very long, and he didn't follow it up with anything that brought a lot of pressure either.
He's got one more, his Ancient Grudge here. This is going to be that with the flashback. Looks like he's probably going to have him sacrifice the welding jar. Or he could just move with the modular too. He can move him over either to Hangerback or Ballista. Yamakiller's running with no cards in his hand too.
But and that's if I'm Yamakiller, I'm much more incentivized to start moving those pieces with modular if I've got an Inkmoth Nexus on board, because now I can use the Walking Ballista to shoot down the Narcomoebas that might get in the way of a quicker kill from Inkmoth Nexus. But you mentioned no Inkmoth on board, no cards in hand. So Gal Schlesinger, who plays as Yamakiller, really kind of in a bind here.
All right, well, looks like he's going to take care of business with the... Walking Ballista.
The flashback forces the use of the welding jar. Now Walking Ballista in. So 15 for Sodek on the life total column, 26 for Yamakiller. The prized amalgam hits the field. Second one in hand for Sodek. Faithless Looting still in the graveyard. And Sodek's going to have the mana if he wants to go that way on his next turn. Now, a little more pressure being applied to Sodek's life total. He'll exchange the Narc Amoeba for one of the flying tokens.
Yamakiller's life total is not in danger at all, though. So he's pretty much running right now. He's looking really good. He's got his opponent down to 10. Looking at the graveyard, not looking like there's a ton of stuff. I mean, I don't think there's no dredgers in there, so not what he's looking for.
The Dark Blast may have the ability to change some things, but I don't think it's going to be enough. If Sodek's life total drops to 5, I believe Yamakiller might be able to find a way to move the modular tokens over to the Walking Ballista and just shoot Sodek down. So Sodek, even though it says 10, at a much more precarious life total than that.
Right, yeah, and, I mean, with the Dark Blast, if he goes that direction, then he's going to go, you know, his 1 black, then he's probably going to use the Faithless Looting using the Dark Blast, but I don't know, it's looking tough because there's no amalgams, there's nothing in there that's coming out right now, so he's going for it, though.
Looking for the Faithless Looting, and you could see Sodek just kind of pinching the bridge of his nose. Not exactly what he had hoped for off the Faithless Looting. Another Nature's Claim.
I mean, the Scrapyard Recombiner right now can't tap, obviously, because he's got Summoning Sickness, so it's going to be his best option, but with the modular...
Where are those going to go? Dark Blast is going to make sure that they don't pump up the flying token from the Hangerback Walker.
Oh, took him out.
So that's a win for Sodek. The way that stacked, and he was able to use that Dark Blast to its fullest potential.
Yeah.
Now, can Yamakiller draw something hot off the top, or does he just elect to ride this Walking Ballista? And that's a nice
2.
That's a nice draw. He also has the Nexus that's getting ready to go. So Sodek finds himself in game 2 being the player who's on the back foot and looking for answers.
He's looking at his conflict rate right now.
Yeah, I think he may have to use that in a non-lethal situation, which most Dredge players are loath to do. They'll do it if it keeps them in the game, but they really want that conflict rate a lot of times for that final punch.
Yep. That's the finisher.
I like this move from Yamakiller, not trying to get in the way and give the easy use of Conflagrate to just pick off the Walking Ballista for one.
Well, and I mean, Sodek gets to drop 2 dredges into the graveyard here, so I mean that's as effective as a Conflagrate can get, other than the obviously amount of damage that it's doing. That's what you're looking for.
So now Inkmoth Nexus has the sky cleared, but it won't be fired up. I think he wants to use the mana to threaten the activation on the Walking Ballista, and that's what Sodek's going to put him to the test for. So the Ballista goes to a 4/4.
And he's got the welding jars back up, so...
Takes the prized amalgam off the board after the block. So Sodek needs something here.
Looking at his Stinkweed Imp.
Yeah, he's going to get the Dredge. He's also got Blast Zone. But Blast Zone really doesn't do anything for him right now.
Yeah.
You know, you have
can't get Blast Zone to 0.
Yeah, and Walking Ballista's CMC is 0 while it's on the field. Any manland or creature land that would be activated by Yamakiller would be 0 as well.
Too bad Vampire Hexmage is Vampire Hexmage legal in Modern? I mean, that would be...
If it is.
All right, well, that would be the one that would get the Blast Zone off, so, right?
Yeah, that would certainly be the case. Maybe we'll see that next week in Singleton. Somebody will roll out a Vampire Hexmage.
There you go. I think that's first strike, too. Is that right, Capolo? Capolo's right on the answers. He's ready. He's right there right now.
It's, I think a 2/1 first strike, sacrifice, remove all counters from target permanent.
Yeah.
Nature's Claim. That essentially trades for the welding jar. Now a flying blocker for Sodek. I don't know if that's going to change the math. It may leave him alive at 2 with a poison counter, because it can just jump in front of the
Oh, he took it out.
Okay, so he's not going to let that happen.
Got a
6.
little point of poison damage there just for funsies.
And that's a case where you might rather have Blink Moth because you're much closer to the life total kill. Might as well attack with the Bloodghast. You're not blocking with it. So Sodek, I don't know if he can find a way out here. 5 power on the board, and of course the Ballista just shoots for 3.
Right, and he can pump it next turn, and that would be it.
3 lands back in play. Back into the hand, excuse me, for
Going
Sodek.
for the Conflagrate.
And he doesn't feel good about it. You can see the body language for Sodek. He's just exchanging his 3 life for the chance to untap once more, I believe.
Uh-oh.
Now coming down.
Ballista, that's it.
Ballista off the top for a Yamakiller, and that's going to be game 2 going to Yamakiller and Hardened Scales. So we go to game 3, Guano. I wasn't sure we would see a game 3 in this matchup because the Dredge deck, it executes its game plan more reliably than some of the other combo decks. And we certainly saw that in the early turns of this game 2, where Yamakiller had no cards in hand, was on the back foot, but a couple of fortuitous draws for a deck that doesn't really manipulate its draws. And suddenly Yamakiller able to leverage the power of his cards and come back. Dredge didn't have great dredgers, but I thought it executed more of its plan early than Hardened Scales did. But Scales, just the power of the deck, able to come back and find a win at the end and now set up game 3.
And the math, I mean, I think he used 3 or 4 Nature's Claims there. So, I mean, he gave him, I think, at least 12 life. So,
yeah.
Unless you're setting up really strong or you're hitting Creeping Chill after Creeping Chill. Oh, he took him out of the sideboard. So, they're in the side. He took him out of the main deck here. So,
Dredge back on the play here in game 3. You see Sodek from Team Ice, and this match from his point of view. That is Sodek's hand on the bottom of your screen. We'll be back to Team Fire's perspective week 3 next week.
Yep. He's keeping this too with the Lightning Axe where you can discard his life from the loam. Ooh, got to get rid of that thing.
Turn 1 Hardened Scales. It's going to be back-to-back games that Yamakiller had the turn 1 Hardened Scales, and he's not going to get to really leverage it.
That's one of the things I learned from Vizquez is when you have a chance, kill the name of the deck. Whatever you do, if it's
what it is, right?
Exactly.
Across all formats.
Right.
Life from the Loam, dredging for Sodek, and he's less interested, I think, in the actual returning of those lands than he is in getting a dredger into the graveyard.
Right. And it's crazy that we haven't seen an Arcbound Ravager yet from Yamakiller. I mean, that is the beast in this deck, and I mean we're at game 3, turn 3, and we still have not seen one on the battlefield yet.
Lightning Axe coming down with the discard. That'll take out the Hangerback Walker. Just the 1 token off the early Hangerback. And neither player right now able to mount much pressure early. And Sodek, I think, Guano, he's done a good job of being the sort of faux control deck at this point. We've seen the removal with the Lightning Axe, and we saw the Nature's Claim to take out the more aggressive and objectively, in a vacuum, more powerful plays from Yamakiller.
This is the value right here. The animation module with the Arcbound Ravager. This is the value right here in this deck. This is where it comes. This is
Your tone of voice tells me you've either killed or been killed by this setup.
Well, just the Arcbound Ravager, there is so much incredible potential for this deck. It's just out of control with the Arcbound Ravager. So many quick kills. He's got the Inkmoth Nexus right now, so, I mean, there are a ton of options for him.
And Dredge not known for being the most removal-heavy strategy, and putting counters from the Ravager onto the Inkmoth has to be an appealing line, because you've got the Narcomoebas that fly, and you've got the occasional Stinkweed Imp that will see the battlefield. But those are very easily controlled by Walking Ballista, like we've seen in previous games. So I have to imagine that Sodek is thinking, I might be looking at an Inkmoth Nexus with some counters on it here in the very near future.
Without a doubt. That's why he's holding that Nature's Claim. I'm sure he's doing the math in his head right now. All right, 14 or 10. What's more dangerous to me right now?
Welding Jar might be a real backbreaking play here, because it would protect the Inkmoth Nexus from the Nature's Claim.
All right, the Mox Opal ready. Mox Opal ready to activate that Inkmoth right now. And he can beef it up. I mean, he can sacrifice the module, the Thopter, always putting it on the... Ooh,
I'm surprised that Sodek forced that. I thought he might hold that for the Inkmoth Nexus to become a creature.
That's what I thought too. Oh, here we are, second modular. He can sacrifice himself here, so it's getting close now.
Beats for 3 down to 7. And I think Yamakiller is thinking, look, at 7, I'm just in on conventional damage at this point, because I've got less of a row to hoe than I do with Infect.
Yep. Or hoe to row, either way.
Cathartic Reunion, going to throw Life from the Loam into the graveyard. Replace the first draw with the Dredge. Second and third.
Oh, he just whiffed on those 3. That was brutal.
Wow. Where's Dr. Frank Karsten when you need him? That is math you don't see very often from the Dredge deck.
And then amalgams are just sitting in there. So, I mean, look, he has to be able to play a land for the turn, right? So wow. Just
and no
the blood gassed out, but there's no blockers here.
And there's no way to get another Narcomoeba into play unless he goes through the graveyard or through the draw step of dredging it. I don't think he's going to be able to make blue out of his hand.
And right here, too, I mean, there's still options, so many options, too. I mean, he's got, with the Scrapyard Recombiner, I mean, he can sacrifice that servo token when it comes off of, here we go, right now, and go get the Arcbound Ravager again, which could just snap so many more.
Now, Sodek just put 10 power into play, but because of the Nature's Claims giving your opponent life, he's in no position to race at 28-5.
Oh, you're right. It is a beast. That's right. It is a beast.
So this is going to be interesting to see what line Sodek picks and what Yamakiller is working with in his hand. The advantage Yamakiller has right now over the game he won in Game 2, he actually has some resources in his hand and isn't just top decking. He had the fortuitous top deck with Walking Ballista, but what can he put together here? So close for Team Fire to draw level at 10-10. If Yamakiller can find the way here in Game 3, the final match on Night 2 of Week 2 of the Modern Streamers League, and there's the Ballista, that might be enough.
Yeah, the Recombiner can sacrifice itself here, and that's what he's doing.
That's 3 shots for the Ballista.
Two blockers in the air. He's only got 2 air blockers here. Oh, he's going to get rid of one of them, though. Oh,
and the other.
All of them.
And you remember, the Blood Gas can't block, and that's going to do it.
Well, he's down to 1.
That's going to, the walking, it was 1 short on the Walking Ballista. All right. I'm on
1
Team
life to 28 life here.
Yeah. So right now, Sodek, just right now, the saddest clown for Team Ice. You can see it as he is up against the wall. And
deflated. Even his nice hair isn't helping him out right now.
Now he can make Stinkweed Imp and have a blocker in the air for the Thopter, but the Thopter is a 3-power flyer, so that's really only buying him 1 turn, and he doesn't have, because of the life that he gave to Yamakiller with the Nature's Claims, the ability to really run him down, despite the fact that he has 12 power on the board.
I mean, he's really got to just pray for a Narcomoeba, right? I mean, I guess you get Faithless. Yeah, it doesn't matter. He's got to pray for one coming into his graveyard, but what can he do here? It's just, that's it. That's the game.
He thinks there's no way out, and we are going to see
that's the end.
Sodek concede to Yamakiller. Wow, we see the power of the Hardened Scales deck as it comes into play and picks up the win at the end. Now Yamakiller joins the list of 2-0 players after 2 weeks. And Team Fire, thanks to its 2-0 players, drawing level at 10 match wins apiece through our first 2 weeks of the Modern Streamers League. This week, Guano, we saw Kat, Dito, Robcaster Mage, and now Yamakiller from Team Fire all get to 2-0 in the league. And we saw TheSaintDoom, Sspiderspace, and Francisco from Team Ice get to 2-0 as well. They were impressive on both sides all night long.
Agreed. I mean, you can't get better Magic than this. Everybody is playing super tight right now.
The Modern Streamers League brought to you and made possible by our friends at Card Hoarder and at Card Kingdom. You need the latest tech or the addition of maybe a piece that was created before you were involved in Magic. Whether you want it digitally or in meat space, you can get it from Card Hoarder or from Card Kingdom. Check them out. They help make the Modern Streamers League possible. And thanks to all of our players on both Team Fire and Team Ice, donating their time, their tech, not only to advance the modern metagame, but also to raise money for charity. Team Fire playing for A21. Their drive is to end human trafficking worldwide. You can donate to A21 and support Team Fire just below on our Twitter page, on our Twitch page, I should say. And for Team Ice, they're playing for the Cancer Research Institute, looking to end all forms of cancer all around the globe. You can support the Cancer Research Institute and Team Ice. No matter how much it is, a donation is always welcome. Those charities and their missions agreed upon by each team here in Season 1 of the Modern Streamers League. Thanks to Shane from the Dive Down for joining us. Thanks to Doom for the Doomcast. And most of all, thanks to you. Guano, next week is Wildcard Week here on the Modern Streamers League. It's Singleton. You got to be just as excited as I am to see these players sort of let loose from expectation and to see what their minds are going to brew up.
So much spice. Like, this is, I mean, it's like, I feel like it's like a combination of Modern and EDH, you know, where you're playing off the top of your deck, you're looking to see what you have, you're hoping you're going to get your interactive cards, but even if you don't, there's so many different lines of things that you can do. It's not that the deck necessarily plays itself, but the options that you're given are either obvious or buried. There's no like, oh, well, no, let's think. It's like, do it or I'm screwed. So that's the best part about Singleton. You just never know what's coming off the top of your deck.
If you want match breakdowns, thanks to Flying Delver, you can get those on our Twitch page, and you can also see them at ModernStreamersLeague.com. You want to know more about the players, their decks, and the charities they play for? It's all online, ModernStreamersLeague.com. For our founder, TheSaintDoom, for Manbat working behind the scenes, for Guano, who is with me both in front of the camera and behind it, for Shane from the Dive Down, I'm Sean. Thanks for joining us tonight. We'll see you next week for Week 3, Monday night on the Modern Streamers League.
See ya.